Just to give you an idea, it became lucrative for me because I was earning about $350, $400 a week, right, at the time. So that, in today's terms, it's $800 to $1,000. I wasn't earning more than an architect would be earning at the time. Why? Because this teacher took the time to teach me and to put me under her wing. So when I got to university, I met two other boys and I taught them how to do it. And they went into their suburbs and also did it. So the three of us became extremely close friends. I went and reapplied again to a bank, but I bought a 1-bedroom timber home, right? It just so happens to have the biggest living room in the world, right? And it had a bathroom, which was the bathroom.
Yes.
It had a kitchen, because it had a kitchen at the back, and it had a laundry, because they used to wash. And they said, yeah, we'll lend you money for your 1-bedroom timber home. And then there's a saying in property development, which is so important. The money is not made again. The money is made again. Right. When he bought the cake for $40, he was guaranteed he was going to make money.
Hey, it's Opie here. It's almost midnight. I've just driven back from a podcast, almost 3-hour podcast where even a couple of the cameras died, so I apologize for that. It hasn't happened before, but I will prepare better next time and make sure we've got bigger batteries or it's connected to the main power. But I'm just come home, as I said, I'm hiding in the theater room where it's a bit quieter because the rest of the house is sleeping now. But I wanted to talk about, just give a quick introduction to this because it is a long podcast. I want you to try and go through it. Dominic is a real estate developer, architect, father, husband, and a lot of other things. He doesn't like using the word entrepreneur to describe him, so I won't do that. But he talks about the power of storytelling, the way you need to sort of, have that grit to keep going on and on and on and on, where most people end up giving up, but he's sort of developed that to keep pushing forward, one hurdle after another hurdle, where he just keeps jumping through. He goes through some of his challenging moments where he almost lost his life on a hospital bed. So he goes to that story, and that sort of gave him the fire, the burn to share some of that message, and a few other stories about developments. A large portion of the podcast is about doing developments and how an average Aussie can get into the property market if you just play the game right. Learn a few skills. Don't be shy to team up with other people if that's what you need to do to get into the market. But he basically goes through a few strategies and a mindset think. I think that's the main thing that you'll get out of it. The way that Dominic thinks is very different to most people, which is why he's been very successful in life. He's got over 30 years of experience in this industry in terms of buildings, construction, architecture, all of that stuff. So have a listen. And normally I don't make this pre-videos in these, but I wanted to make this especially because the cameras died, and I wanted to let you know that it is a longer podcast, but have a listen. I think you will get something out of it. Enjoy. I know I did, but thank you, Dominic. Bye.
Welcome to the Victory Lion Podcast. Lion!
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
And now your host,
O.P. Jayasinghe.
Mr. Dominic Bagnato.
Yep.
Pleasure to meet you in
Opie?
person. Yes, that's
Opie.
right.
Nice to meet you
very
as well.
Very easy. Thank you so much for making the time.
It was my pleasure. I really love chatting about everything in life. So
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for coming, because you are a very humble man, because I know what you've accomplished. 40 developments on your own, is that right?
Well, some of them are on our own, and some of them with joint venture partners. Yeah.
What I want to do is, before,
I didn't know I did 40 until someone asked me to count them.
The question.
If I told you I thought I did under 5 or 6, that's exactly what I thought. I had a heart attack when I had a look.
Yeah, because that's a big number. Right?
Yeah, but then if you look back in time, I thought, but hang on, I've been doing this for 30 years. That's not unreasonable.
That's not
almost do
unreasonable.
one a year.
Yeah, true. I suppose this is a question that I can, save till the end, but I'll ask this at the start, which is, what do you want to give to the world in terms of, if you were to have one message from this podcast, what would it be?
Well, the concept of having a home to go to has been with me since I was a little boy, which is strange to say, really. So, I'm from a large family of 7 kids, mum and dad, right? And so it's safe to say that we weren't poor, but we had no money. So,
Yeah.
but we always had a home to go to.
Okay.
So we didn't have the luxuries of life, but there was always food on the table, and so it was. I understood home was important, and I did in my young years hear one night mum and dad arguing over finances, not at each other, just the lack of.
Lack of, yeah.
And that really, I was barely year 7, and I heard this, and it really distressed me that I interpreted that we would lose our home. I was way off base.
Yeah.
And I did something really silly. No, I wasn't silly. I used to do oil painting, even as a young 10-year-old. So the next morning, I didn't go to school, and I packed 10 oil paintings that I had painted, put them on my back, and I walked to the nearest subdivision to try and sell them to raise the money that I thought they were arguing about. And I don't think anyone knows this. If my family's watching this, they would be probably shocked. But I did. So I door knocked this little kid selling, and no one bought one, but I scored lollies and I scored all of this. And so ever since I was a little kid, I thought to myself, I'm never going to be in that position. And if I can, I will protect this with anyone or anybody. This is my life.
So you had that entrepreneurial spirit before you even knew it?
Maybe we'll touch about entrepreneurial spirit in a minute. But no, I didn't know. I was really lucky. I was so lucky as a young kid because I had mentors, and I didn't know who these I didn't know they were called mentors.
Right.
So let me explain myself. So at the age of 7, Dad decided to pick us all up and move to another suburb away from where we were living. So I had to leave schools. So in grade 2, I had to leave school. And we were quite a novelty at the school because my dad had eventually had 6 boys and 1 girl. But at the time, there was 5 of us. So at the school, there was all these boys, right?
Yep.
Quite a novelty. And so my grade 2 teacher, as a gift, as a parting gift, gave me, I'll never forget this, a ruler. Kids today might not know what that is. A timber ruler it was, a HB pencil, and the rubber.
Okay.
Now, in today's world of we have everything, that meant the world to me, coming from a home that we didn't have much. That meant the world. So I started drawing, and I loved drawing. And that love came from that one gesture. So when I got to primary school, I just met another young boy who loved to draw. So we used to draw all the time. When I got to high school and got to year 7, of course I wanted to do art and I wanted to do graphics. But let me premise it by saying this. I already knew I wanted to be an architect.
You did?
Yes, from the age of 7. That one gesture from that wonderful teacher, and the fact that my dad was a concreter and worked on construction sites.
You knew that environment.
He used to take me to work.
Okay.
And I remember he would wake me at 5 a.m. and it was pitch black. And this is on school holidays.
Yep.
I would jump in the car with him. We'd go to the huge subdivision sites, and I would watch the sun come up. But as the sun came up, I'd hear the roar of the big Tonka yellow Caterpillar trucks go and the smell of diesel, and I just fell in love with construction. Just fell in love with it. And so my role as a young boy wasn't much on site. My dad would get me to, in those days they had form work, that they formed concrete, and I used to get a paintbrush, dip it into diesel and just paint it, right, so it wouldn't stick. So it wasn't like I did a lot. But then on the way home, I'd fall asleep in the cabin of the car, and Dad would give me $20, you know what I mean, just for the day's work.
Just for the day's work, yeah.
So I fell in love with that. When I got to high school, I already knew I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be involved in designing and building projects. And that's when I met my next mentor, and probably most important mentor. Her name was Louise Speck. She was an art teacher, and she took me under her wing, and the graphics teacher took me under his wing, and I had both teachers every year from year 7 to 12. And even in one particular year where the timetable clashed, which meant I couldn't have them as teachers, they went to the principal and said, can we teach Dominic outside of class on his own?
Are you serious?
That's how much they meant to me and I meant to them. And I didn't know it at the time. These are mentors doing what they can, to take your life to another level. Louise was also a special teacher in that her teachings didn't stop at school. She would grab me and a couple of other students on weekends and take us to art galleries, take us to restaurants. She would, with all her heart, teach us life. I mean, today that would be frowned upon. So she would ask my mum, can I take Dominic? And she made one remark at a parent-teacher, and I'll never forget it. And she said, Dominic's the child I'll never have. She didn't have children, right? And so for me, it was a warm and loving relationship. Now, come year 11, 12, she knew that I still came from a family that, didn't have much, right? And she knew I really wanted to be an architect, but I really wanted to go to university. And she knew I would struggle financially. Okay, she knew that, right? So she said, I'm going to teach you how to earn some money.
Yep.
And I said, hey, how? And so she sat me down and she taught me how to do 3D renderings. So in those days, there was no internet, no computers. And the way property was sold was through newspapers. But not only sold through newspapers, but through black and white sketches of the houses. Artists would go to the house that was for sale, draw it, and that would be printed in the newspaper. Not even photos.
No photos.
Well, they were expensive. So if you wanted colour photos, that was very expensive.
Okay, so it's not worth it.
So she said, I'm going to teach you how to do 3D renderings, and you can go and get 10 real estate agents and offer your services to draw houses for them for the newspapers. So she taught me.
Yep.
So come year 12, I did exceptionally well in graphics. I got a high mark. And I went and got 10 local real estate agents and said, hi, I'm an artist. I charge $35 a sketch. And then they said, can you draw the floor plans? And I said, yes, because I was doing graphics. And they said yes. And so I suddenly had 10 agents on my books.
Yep.
And they would ring me up every week and say, hi, Dominic, this house is for sale. The deadline is Friday. So I would have to go there, photograph it, come back home, draw the floor plan, measure it all up, and have it back to their office by deadline to meet the newspapers.
Okay.
So the business started that way.
Yep.
And then one day they said to me, do you know anything about this thing called Word? I said, Word? What is that? And they said, it's a thing. There's computers now where you can do documents. And so I went home, and my younger brother, who was born at the very cusp of computers, had a Commodore 64.
Yes.
And I said, do you know how to do this thing called Word? And he said, yeah. I said, I'm going to offer brochures that go into windows of the real estate agents, but apparently you can do all different fonts, right? And so he would do them for me, and I would photocopy the sketch I would do the fonts, leave a gap for the sketch,
and copy that in,
and then bring it back, and they would put that in their shop front window. So my service was, for $100, you get a floor plan, a sketch, and a poster for your window.
They must have loved it, right?
They loved it. Now, just to give you an idea, it became lucrative for me because I was earning about $350, $400 a week, right, at the time. So that, in today's terms, it's $800 to $1,000. I wasn't earning more than an architect would be earning at the time.
Wow.
Why? Because this teacher took the time to teach me and to put me under her wing. So when I got to university, I met 2 other boys, and I taught them how to do it, and they went into their suburbs and also did it. So the 3 of us became extremely close friends.
Amazing.
And so at university, I said to the boys, I've got 3 things that I need to do in my life. Do you want to join me? And they said, what is it? I said, I want to travel the world. I want to buy a home and renovate it, and I want to open up my own business. Are you in? And at this stage, we were first or second year university. And they said, we're in. I said, awesome. So after third year, we backpacked around the world together.
Okay.
But before we did that, we bought a home together. So we went and bought a home in Melbourne, in Carlton, $99,000. We had worked part-time jobs to raise the deposit, and we got a loan. And the bank manager, I mean, they don't do this today, but the bank manager gave us the loan because he had never seen, at this stage there was a fourth guy that joined us as well. He had never seen such enterprise from 4 young guys and backed us.
Okay.
We
Nice.
didn't have the serviceability, we didn't have anything that they have today. We had part-time jobs.
I work in Carlton at the moment, and things are very expensive,
Very expensive.
right?
So if we bought a home for 99,000, our interest rate was with the ANZ bet at 18%. And we worked every night, weekends for an entire year to fully renovate this house.
Wow.
Right. Anyway, so we took a year off university to do all of this. The net result was we made no money.
Okay.
We actually made no money because I did the sums and the interest rate repayments were higher than the renovation costs themselves. We were naive.
Yep.
We then rented it out, went and completed our 2 years of university, and then we sold it. And we basically came out with our money.
Okay.
But we learned the most valuable lesson ever in life. If you're ever going to make no money and you want to learn a skill, that's how you do it. 20 years old, no money, bang, and we did it. And then it was 92, we had graduated, and I was still doing these sketches. And there was, in 92, people who are listening or watching this will know that there was like a mini recession. There were basically no jobs. So we're graduating out of university, and students are getting jobs for peanuts, working for like $5 an hour, or nothing. They're just trying to get into the system. And so my friend Anthony, whom we traveled the world with, I said to him, Anthony, I'm not going to go work for $5 an hour. I'm already earning way more than that. Why would I go and do that?
Yeah.
And he said, and he was doing sketches as well because I taught him. And I said, do you want to open up a business? He goes, doing what? I said, what we're doing now. We just, instead of being stuck at home.
Yep.
And so we found this little factory loft in Carlton, and it wasn't trendy then. It wasn't trendy at all. And we found the space, and we said, right, we need desks, we need equipment, we need stuff, right? And back then, the world was a bit different. So we went to all these government auctions, and we bought the blinds from BP Petrol that was shutting down. We bought some desks that were like $5 each. We sort of had, we made a really cool environment, and went to a government auction house, and they were auctioning off these printers, government printers, the huge machines.
Large ones, yeah.
That you print drawings out.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that were auctioning didn't know what they were. They were like $10,000 a
Yeah,
piece.
they don't know.
So I put my hand up and said $50. And the hammer came down to me for $50. And we had now had a printer and a photocopier. And so there we were in 1993, staring at each other in a beautiful warehouse loft that we had decked out ourselves and renovated in Carlton, cosmopolitan Carlton, restaurants, cafes. And we were happy as, really happy, because we had a life. We would walk down the streets and have coffee and earning an income. And so this went for about a year or two. And then something unusual happened. The market began to pick up. Now, bear in mind, at this stage, we've got a connection to at least 20 agencies. So Anthony's got his 10 in his area, and I've got my 10. The same agents that were saying to us, hey, you know the house that you drew that went on the market in the newspaper? And we said, yeah. Well, the person that bought it happens to want to put 2 units on there, or dual occupancy, or aren't you guys designers? And we said, yeah. And they said, well, here's the number, ring him. So we would quote and we'd get the job. So
as an architect.
As an architect. And then a second one would occur, and the third, and the fourth. The market would pick up, and more people would come, and more of these agents would keep referring people. And before we knew it, the architectural work was more than the sketching, right? So we said to each other, why don't we merge, because we still had our own separate little practices, become one entity, and we called ourselves Bagnato, and his surname was Marion, Bagnato Marion Design, and get rid of the sketches, and we have an architectural practice. Now, at that stage, we still couldn't call ourselves architects by law, because you have to clock up a certain amount of hours under an architect or or working before you can sit an exam, and we hadn't done all that.
Okay.
So we could call ourselves Bagnato Marion Design, not Bagnato Marion Architects, right? But who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares? So we started getting people that had never done development before coming to us. We started to get a reputation for getting the result. We had not failed at getting a development approval anywhere. We just kept getting the results. And so developers started coming to us. And then a phenomenon, is the right word, happened in Melbourne. Huge areas of inner city Melbourne, which were industrial, started to be converted for residential use. So we started converting our warehouses into homes or residential warehouse shells. You know what that is?
Yeah, I've seen that.
So we started converting. And before we knew it, we were doing most of north of Melbourne, in the city, Collingwood. We had huge projects converting. That was our forte, subdivision, cutting up buildings into smaller lots.
Okay.
But as budding designers, we started getting frustrated because developers have a knack of taking your drawings and then building something else or modifying them. So in other words, they don't look like our work. So we got frustrated. So one day, my partner Anthony goes, you know what? Why don't we build our own? We said, okay, but we need to be builders. So we went and studied to be builders and got our commercial and domestic license.
Did you?
Yeah, both of us, right? So the next day we opened up our own building company. And we were in Grattan Place, Carlton. So the name of the company was Grattan Developments. So Grattan Developments was born. So Anthony became the on-site builder, and I continued to be the architect running the architectural practice. And at that stage, we had got our first employee, and we were so nervous. So we did that, and we started building. But then clients started seeing our work and saying, why don't you design what you're building for yourself? We love what you're doing. And we would say, but we want to, but you always push back. But now we had real life examples. And so we had now the third component, which is the development arm, which was sourcing properties and building. So that went on for quite a while. And then we got a partner in because we had the three phases: architecture, building and development, and it was too much for us. So we got our partner Frank in. He looked after the architecture business. Anthony was the builder, and I looked after development.
Okay.
I found projects for the office.
Got it.
And clients, people often say, but weren't clients nervous that you were competing against them in the same markets? Not at all.
There was enough.
There was enough for everybody.
Enough, yep.
And plus, we could experiment with our work. They could visually see it live and then say, hey, do that for us as well.
Got it.
So that was how, and eventually we clocked up enough experience that we went and set our registration and became registered architects. So the name changed to Bagnato Marion, and our third partner joined the company, Garina, and hence Bagnato Marion Garina Architects was born.
Nice.
And so we rode the wave of the 90s and the 2000s, and it was really, really exciting. And we used to love walking down Lygon Street. Everybody knew us. Back then, there wasn't a proliferation of all these cafes, so they were all along Lygon. So at lunchtime, you couldn't get a seat. There were people having breakfast. But because we were local, there was always a seat for us.
Amazing.
It doesn't matter where we worked. And it was a sense of community. It was such an awesome time. But sometimes things come to an end. And in 2007, I had a profound experience with a client, a really wealthy client. And he came, I won't name him, but he came to see me and he said, Dominic, don't do what I do. And he was a developer. And I said, I don't understand. What do you mean? And he goes, Dominic, my kids hate me. I said, what? What do you mean they hate you? He goes, they hate me because I was never there and I'm never there. I'm always chasing the money, always chasing the work. I'm never there. And it really hit me. And he said, don't do, and I was just turning 40. And I suddenly realized I had 2 little kids. And then I reflected and I thought, I'm here every weekend. I'm here at night. I don't see them when I get up. I don't see them when I get home. And it just had a massive effect on me. So I spoke to my wife Marie, whom I married at the time, and I also met her at university, and she was working part-time in the practice as well. And she said, just leave. I said, leave what? The practice. I said, but I started this practice. What do you mean leave? She goes, just leave. Start again. Start a new life. And at first it sounded a bit ridiculous. Why would you leave something you started? And there was no arguments. We're at top of our game. Everything's going well.
Were you working like that many hours?
Yeah, too many hours.
It was full on.
It was full on. Yeah, it was full on. And we were young, and we had the
of course,
energy. And it wasn't to the point that it was detrimental to the kids, but I could foresee that it would be.
Okay.
It would be. And so I said to the guys, I got them one day, and I said, look, I'm making a big decision, and it's nothing personal. But in 12 months' time, I want to leave. Not today, not tomorrow, but in 12 months' time. There's only one thing I need you to do for me, and that is to remove my name from the business and change the name. So 12 months to rebrand. And for that, I pretty much want you guys to just continue with your lives, and I'll quietly walk away. I won't chase our clients. It's not personal.
Yeah.
And they were really good. They understood. And so Bagnato, Marion, Garino, over the next 12 months, changed to the first three letters of BMG Architects. And that today still survives with Frank. So Frank's still doing that.
Yeah.
And Anthony's still doing Grattan. And so I found myself in 2008 with Marie sitting at home. We're both architects. And once again, no work. So it was cold. We cut it cold. But we had a wonderful potential client, who said, if you do this, I will give you your first job. So it was someone that I had met.
Job meaning architectural job or development job?
He had bought one of the homes that I had designed.
Okay.
And he said, if you go out on your own, I will give you an architectural commission to design our home. Okay. Not a brand new home. He was buying an Art Deco home, one of my favourite style of architecture, and I'll get Marie to design it.
Yeah.
And Dom, I know you're a licensed builder. I'll get you to project manage it.
And for us non-architects, what's an Art Deco home?
An Art Deco home is just a style of architecture. It's hard to describe, but typically, this is naive for me to say this, but you might see architecture. It's got arches and some motifs. It's very simple architecture.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Okay.
And he purchased it, and that was the one job we had. And I project managed it, Marie designed it, and it was the most beautiful home. And he did one more thing that's special to this day, and I'll always be grateful. He then went and started telling people. He became our greatest advocate. And so we started picking up referrals. And
that makes a difference.
A massive difference for someone. Once again, you look back in life and you think, how did you get here? And you don't know until you look back.
Yeah.
That first teacher that took an interest in me in grade 2 that gave me, the pencil and a ruler and a rubber. The art teacher and graphics teacher who took me under their wing.
Yeah.
They didn't have to, right? And then at university, I met a couple of boys that shared my passion. We traveled the world together. We opened the business together. We renovated a house together, and we're still friends today. And to this day, the boys are doing what I'm doing, and we have dinner every 4 weeks so we don't lose contact.
Yeah.
The four of us.
That's
the
so
same
good.
4 boys from 1990, we still have dinner. And so this new practice with my wife, I said to her, Marie, I've had my go. You supported me in my endeavours, because by that stage we had 15 staff. We were killing it. It was a practice. It was a thriving practice. I said, now it's your turn. What do you want if you were to set up a practice? And she said, I don't really want to do developer work. I want to do high-end home and design homes that mean something to us. So she made that stance, which was fantastic, which meant saying no to jobs. Yeah, how hard it is to say no. If it doesn't fit the criteria, if it doesn't meet our way of building, she would say no.
Could you describe that, what you mean by high-end?
I guess an example would be if someone came in and said, could you design us a mock reproduction Federation home? We would say no.
Okay.
The old Dominic and the old practice would say, yeah, not a problem.
Yep.
Marie took the stance, no, we don't do mock reproduction. We are architects living today. Let us design you a beautiful home for your family today.
Got it.
This is who you are.
Yep.
Let us practice architecture for you.
Yep.
So I would cringe in the background, hearing her say, we're not doing it. But she was right, because the practice grew and she stood for something. And in life, you've got to stand for something. And to this day, that's who she is. I always maintained my love of development. So behind the scenes, I would still do developments
Yep.
for the family, for us, or for, we might partner up with someone. So I didn't stop that.
Because you love
I just love
the
it.
fights at the background and waiting.
I
and
love the
friction.
creativity. I love working with sites with constraints. Now, we developed a certain style of architecture early, not architecture. How do you become developers with no money? We didn't really touch on that. How? A couple of young guys, they got no money. How do you do it? So we developed by accident, because we met developers that loved subdivision, and we had learned the skill of carving up factories.
Yep.
We had developed this understanding of being able to see things in buildings that others couldn't see.
Yep.
So other architects didn't do what we did. We could see a building and understand, if we cut up this building, we could end up with 4 little buildings. And we know exactly where to cut them up, because there's a wall here and there's a wall here. So we learned a skill of identifying opportunity where others didn't see them.
When you say others, do you mean other developers or other
The other
architects?
developers / architects.
Okay.
Now, of course, there are other architects that saw what we saw,
Yeah.
but they were few and far between.
Okay.
Now, how does that help us? Okay, so if there is a development site, and clearly the average developer, most architects can clearly see that it's a 2-unit site,
Yep.
we wouldn't go there and buy it. We wouldn't even attempt to it. We wouldn't even try. Because if they can see it and we can see it, then the winner on the day is actually the loser, because the winner's going to bid and bid and bid until they win the property.
Yep.
And they would have probably paid too much. We developed the skill in that, can we find properties where they think there's only 2 units, but there's actually 3 we can see. We have this strong belief,
Yep.
because of the analysis we're doing, we can get 3. So when they go to the auction and their top dollar is 900,000, we can come over the top and pay 1.2. And it's still feasible.
Or like you put, 6 or 7, 6.
Yeah. We started with 7, we ended with 6. So we developed that concept. Now, how does that help you as a developer? Well, property is valued by the yield. So the bank we would get development approval for these properties. You also got to understand, we were dealing at a time when the banking institution was a lot easier to borrow money. So we could borrow money based on our architectural practice, our wages. It was far easier to borrow money, far easier. And so we would improve the value dramatically overnight. So the banks would revalue the property we just bought, and that extra yield would take that property to another level.
Well, yeah.
We would then take it to another level where we now had inbuilt equity. So in other words, the bank valued it at, say, 1.2 million, and we had 200 or 300,000 of built-in profit, as an example.
Within a few months?
Oh, well, in those days, it was easier to get planning through. So within 6 months.
6 months, yep.
Now, how does that help with the bank? Well, the bank could say, well, they have money in there already. What do you need to go on? We need money to develop. But it got even better. Not only did they lend you money to build, they lent you what we call capitalised interest. They lent you the interest that you had to pay them to have the loan.
Yeah.
So it was happy times for years. We could borrow the entire amount, and interest rates started to come down. And so it became a cycle of, we could identify opportunities that others couldn't see. We could borrow money efficiently and effectively, all the money. And not only could we do that for us, but we could do it for developers.
Yeah.
So they kept coming back. So things just kept growing and growing and growing. So
Can you do that today, like capitalize the interest?
yeah, you can still borrow capitalised. Yeah, the way banks lend is pretty much the same, but the rules are different. They're more stringent. They're tougher. They had the Royal Commission because they were lending money to everybody.
Yep.
And so, those who didn't understand that it wasn't their money pretty much let down everybody else that understood it wasn't our money.
Yep.
So, that's disappointing because we've all paid the penalty for it, and first home buyers are paying the penalty for that today. And so, my wife and I started the new practice, and it was harder than I thought, because you go from having a secretary staff to now there's just the two of us, in front of a computer. But we continued. And then, so that was around 2008, 2009. And
Right at the GFC. I mean, it didn't really hit Australia, did it?
it did.
It did?
Well, not in the way you think. So in 2012, just before 2012, around 2010, we had bought this former Anglican timber church
Okay.
in the suburb I lived in. And we were going to extend this 120-year-old timber church, save it, and build our dream home.
Okay.
We were going to do that. Actually, we bought it and we worked with the Heritage Department of Council, loved our concepts, and the property wasn't heritage listed. So that they were good enough to allow us to design what we wanted, because they knew who we were. We had a pretty good name in the local area. And after we got approval and it was all ready to go, then they put a heritage overlay over the top of it.
Are you serious?
So they allowed us, and then they protected our design.
Oh, protected your design. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
it was the reverse.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I'll make you laugh, and this is a true story. So I bought the church, and I went to borrow money from the bank. And the bank said, we don't lend money to churches.
Oh my God.
I said, I didn't buy a church. Or I did buy a church, but it's no longer a church. The Anglican church has left.
Yeah.
I said, no, the church is still there. And I'm going to say this in all due respect, God is still there.
Yeah.
I said, what? What do you mean God's still there? They said, well, unless you can prove that it's not a church, we don't lend money to churches. So I had to get evidence, or get a member of the church to come and perform some sort of ceremony, and I got a certificate to say that it's not. I don't know the technical words for
Yeah.
it. It's no longer a church.
Wow.
Okay. So then you know what I did? I went and reapplied again to a bank that I bought a 1-bedroom timber home, right? It just so happens to have the biggest living room in the world,
Yeah.
right? And it had a bathroom, which was the bathroom.
Yes.
It had a kitchen, because it had a kitchen at the back, and it had a laundry, because they used to wash the... And they said, yeah, we'll lend you money for your 1-bedroom timber home. And they lent us the money.
That's hilarious.
It's hilarious, really. But disaster hit. 2011, 12, there was another... I don't know if you look back in the record, there was a financial disaster. There wasn't much work going on. Work plummeted in the practice. It was not a great time. In fact, it was a terrible time, because a couple of things happened. We realised we could not move into this church that we had spent... Marie designed it, and I worked a year as the builder, building this thing. And on top of all that, I had gone in for some minor examinations on my leg to discover that I needed major surgery on my leg. Major surgery.
Okay. This was 2011, you said.
2011, 12, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And so, lo and behold, we have no work. We can't keep our dream home. We have to sell it. And I'm now laid up for 6 months, barely able to walk from this major surgery. So we were devastated. Like we had gone from success to just looking at each other. And in this very room that we're in now, I sat on the couch, devastated, because I also wasn't able to walk and wasn't convinced I'd walk again, which is really hard.
That
because
bad?
Yeah, because it was a major operation. And the doctors told me, I will, you just have to be patient.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to make you laugh, but this is a true story. So you got to remember, 2012 wasn't an era where social media was great. It wasn't like, I think Facebook might have even just come around then.
Yeah, you're right. It would have just come around.
It would just come around. So I had this iPad that one of my brothers had given me as a gift for helping him out. And I'm sitting on the couch, and I found this site, this platform, a US platform called Houzz, Houzz.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
So I'm looking at this platform thinking, oh, what are these pretty pictures and all these architects who have got their work. And then I started scrolling, and it said, oh, I can open up a free account as an architect, and I can download my work. and it's like having a website.
Yeah.
I really didn't understand what I was doing because I wasn't completely computer savvy, and I felt sorry for myself and my kids and my wife that we're basically not destitute, but we've got no. The practice is gone, the house is gone, and I downloaded it.
Rewind back to why the house went. What?
Okay, because we had no work coming in,
Yep.
and
So
we didn't think we could afford to keep it.
Okay, so that was the reason.
It was this beautiful we were upgrading.
Yeah. Okay.
Upgrading was off the books now.
Got it. Okay.
And we had this magnificent party to celebrate the church, which was an amazing event. But it was still heartbreaking to build something that you want to move into and then not to. It's very hard. But anyway, so we've got no work, we've got no house, and I had started to build this recycled place here that was half finished. So
Yeah.
I'm sitting in here in a half finished house, feeling sorry for myself, and I downloaded this church onto the site. And then I started watching it over the next couple of days. The iPads kept pinging, ping, 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 ping. And I said to my wife, there are all these people around the world downloading our photos, making comments. What's going on? What is this thing, this social media thing? Because I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Oh, people love our work. And we started getting emotional. Oh my God, there are people that like our work. There are people that like our work. I know it sounds ridiculous in this day and age, but back then, 2012,
It's a big thing.
it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I started getting calls from magazines saying, could we publish the church? And we said, yeah, that'd be awesome. Then we started getting organizations around the world, platforms around the world publishing the church.
The church.
Just some of them were publishing without our permission. TV stations wanting to fly down from Germany to do a show about the church. Organizations in America. And by this stage, we had sold it to a family that was a surgeon with a lot of kids, and he didn't want it to have
Anything to do with it.
So we couldn't get access. But nevertheless, we had worldwide exposure around the world of this church that was renovated. And if people want to look it up, it's still emotional to me, but it's number 1 Hudson, Hudson, number 1 Hudson Street, Moonee Ponds, Melbourne, Victoria.
That's a really nice area.
It is a nice area. And so we started getting work
Because of
because
this.
of this church. And so I'm sitting there thinking, we had to sell the property because work dried up. I was operating on, I have no income. I download this church, and now because of this church, the practice is up again and going.
Isn't it funny how things line up, right?
So we're still disheartened because we had to get rid of the church, but the church brought us back.
Income again.
They brought us back to life. So that was the catalyst of many, many projects to come.
Okay.
And so Marie continued to build the practice, and she's a brilliant designer, a brilliant architect. And I continued to do developments, the love of developments, some with joint venture partners. And to this day, I love doing that. But throughout this whole period, I remember we spoke about earlier about the concept of home. And that's always been in my heart, because as a little boy, seeing mum and dad argue, losing our potential home, and I've got 2 little kids, not losing the practice, letting go of the practice, which is home. This loss of home stayed with me forever, and I vowed that wherever I could, if anyone ever asked for help regarding their home, I would always be there. And a couple of family members came to me once and said, look, there's no chance of us ever owning a home. It's too hard, it's too difficult. And so I demonstrated to them that it is possible. And so what I did, I sourced and found this little property, barely a couple of 100 square meters in a laneway in Melbourne that you would never think to build anything. And I proposed 2 townhouses with no parking, 2 double-storey townhomes, got development approval, was able to convince the bank to give them money. So I was the mediator. The money was given. I built them the 2 townhomes, and they moved in.
Wow.
And they both got married, had 2 little children there. And the day they moved in, 200,000 of equity built in. The deposit was built in.
Automatically.
They
Amazing.
followed every rule. I gave them strict budgets on what they could choose for these 2 homes. And up until less than a month ago, they still owned them. 6, 7, 8, no, 10 years later. They're now migrated to family homes with kids. So those 2 little homes were the catalyst. And that started to make me think, why aren't young people collaborating with each other? Yes, it's difficult to get a home on your own, but what if one couple got together with another couple and bought a property? And I'm not saying own a property together. I'm saying, can they manifest 2 properties? Can they do that? And the answer was, yes, they can. With the right guidance, they could do it.
And this is why I'm talking to you, Dom. To be honest, this keeps me up at night. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I actually, worry about the average Australian. How are they going to get into the Australian dream? And when I saw some of your stuff, I'm going, wow, maybe this guy has the answer.
I would sit with Marie, my wife, and say, Marie, are we lucky that we're in the building industry? Are we lucky? And she said, well, we're lucky that that's where we are in life, but I'm sure there are people that belong to other industries and they're lucky and they have their perks. I said, I know, but we're lucky in that we know how to design, we know how to build. Now, the reality in life is that developers make money like this. They pay architects, they pay builders, but there is a certain amount of money that's theirs. And that number is usually about 25%.
Equity you're talking about?
No, they want to make 25% profit.
Okay.
So if there's anything up for grabs, it's the 25%. So in other words, if you and your wife and another couple came together, I would say you've got that 25%. You're the developer. So if you're the developer, you get to have that.
Okay.
Because that's what will give you your first home. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Otherwise, you've got to pay market value. Market value is the 25% is now in there and you're paying full price.
Okay.
And I always said to myself and to my wife, the scariest thing that my kids could ever say to me is, Dad, I'm going to an auction, I'm going to put my hand up, I'm going to buy a property and I'm going to have a mortgage for 30 years. That's the scariest thing that I would think would happen. So how did I do it? Well, when I first got married, I didn't have money. So we hopped, skipped and jumped from suburb to suburb to suburb by doing developments, my wife and I. So every project we've ever done has been a development.
Okay.
And it's possible and anyone can do it. The issue is trust. But Dominic, who do we trust? Mm-hmm. Who do we trust to source the property? Who do we trust for anything? But that comes with getting the right team of people together.
So, the devil's advocate, play here. But Dominic, I know I'm not an architect, I'm not a builder, I'm not a this, I don't...
Okay. So I remember in the early days of my practice with the boys, I remember, and this happened regularly, but I remember 2 gentlemen came to us and said, hi, we've been referred to you. We want to be really honest with you. We've been bankrupt before. We hardly have any money. We've got enough money to do a little renovation and we've never done this before. We don't even know barely what an architect is. And we're thinking, you're confessing that you've been bankrupt, you don't know what you're doing, but you want us to take you on. And I looked at my partner, Anthony, at the time and I said, well, we don't exactly have a lot of work anyway, and we're young, and they're honest, and we said yes. Anyway, so we did the little renovation for them, and they made some money. They went and bought a site, and we guided them to put 2 units on there. And then eventually by their 3rd or 4th project, they found a project where they made $1 million.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you the truth, this went on for years with many clients that have never done it before and became multi-millionaires. And one client is probably one of the biggest developers in Melbourne now. And one day I sat down and I thought, I don't understand. How can people with no skill, no knowledge come to us and they've made it? Beautiful homes, cars, wealth, and they were, and I use this affectionately, dumb. Mm-hmm. And then it hit me. They're not dumb. I'm dumb. They were smart enough to build a team. They didn't need to know how to do it, but they did need to know how to source and create and build a team.
And that's the secret
and
sauce.
And that was the secret sauce. So I thought, oh my God, all they had to do was find the architect, right? So in our case, they found us. We built the team. Oh, don't you know we need a land surveyor? What's a land surveyor? We'll tell you what that is. Oh, we'll need a traffic engineer. What's that? We'll get the traffic engineer. Would you like us to organise the landscape designer? Yes. So we, the architects, built the team and kept advising the client, keeping them in the loop.
Can I ask, is it because you do this, or is this a service
No,
that
I would
most
say
architects-
traditionally, most architects, if you go and hire an architect, he or she will tell you, apart from the services of
Architecture,
us, architecture, we will need the services of whatever the project is.
Yeah.
A land surveyor, a town planning consultant, an arborist, we will need their services. Oh, but we don't know anyone like that. Oh, would you like me to get you some quotes? Because as an architect, we deal with many consultants. Would you like us to get you 3 quotes for each consultant? Or are you happy for us to build a team that we're comfortable with? Everybody's different. So when the team is built, the architect is coordinating all that for the client and educating the client in the process. Now, what happened after the 3rd project? The client understood the process.
Okay.
Then the client would start sourcing projects that were similar to the ones we had done for him. So then they learned how to do it. So we taught them, and they taught us, and off everybody went.
And they'd come to you and go, "Hey, Dom, these meet your requirements
Yeah.
of the ones that we did earlier.
We did
What do
one
you
in
think?"
that suburb. This looks really similar, and it became that. So I know it can be taught.
Okay.
So if you don't know anything about it, I know
Yeah.
it can be taught.
It's a learned skill.
It's a learned skill.
Okay.
You'll fumble your way through the first one, possibly the second, but by the third. But if you've got the team, it all comes together. But I'm saying in regards to you understanding
Understanding it.
And the only thing that changes if you continue this as a career is that team members get replaced. So as these clients grew and the type of type of project changed, you might have to replace one team member with another because of skill level.
Okay.
And ultimately, we were replaced when it came to a particular project that we said, no, that's not the sort of work we do. But we know architects that do that. So that's so it can be taught.
Yep.
So if a first-time home buyer said to me with another couple, hey, we're best friends, our wives, whatever, we want our first home, I would guide them, to find the right site. We would build the team to do the project. And that 25% is their money.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So instead of the developer making that money and then going to market at full price, that's their money.
That's their money. Would
Now,
you,
even if the 25% you had to give away 5% to hire you to project manage it because they work full time, so what? You still got 20%. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
and would you be comfortable, just a couple doing it, not 2 couples? Whatever.
Oh no, there's a team of architects. I won't name them in case I just don't want their names, but they bought a project. Well-known architects. They bought a project where they built, I think, 8 townhomes. They got 8 friends,
Okay.
and all 8 of them built them, and they all ended up with one each at wholesale price because they are the developer.
They are the developers.
So if at the end of the project there was 8 townhomes and they were worth $1.2 million each, I'm making these numbers up.
Yeah.
It might have owed them $900,000 each. The power of collaboration.
Collaboration. So that's what you're trying to get at.
Collaborate. I
collaborate.
think it's getting hard, even for me, to do projects by myself. It's just getting harder. Okay. So if you want to eliminate the risk, now, for first-time buyers that want to get into this arena, you don't want to end up with a home with someone, a single home. You want to end up with a scenario where you end up with something each.
Yes.
Now, you might have bought a home where you subdivide. One couple ends up with the land. One couple might end up with the house that's there.
Okay.
It's easier to do all the mathematics so that the equity is identical. So that the person ended up with the land, the banks might turn around and say, well, that land's worth 800, but the couple will say, oh, great, we only owe 600. So their $200,000 deposit is in there.
Yep.
You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah. And you would recommend not just a handshake, but would you put trust structures?
Oh no, you've got to put. There's all structures that you have to put in place, and so when I did it with these family members, I knew I could do that for anybody, and so I started watching the news over these many years and watching doom and gloom. First time home buyers will never own a home. These people will never own a home, and I vowed that my kids won't be like that. I will teach them how to do it. I wouldn't be able to gift them a home, but at least I'll teach them the skill. And so clients would hear about this. Will you teach our kids? And so this just grew amongst my little circle of teaching people how to do it. It wasn't really something I ventured out to do, though I always had said to my wife over many years, one day I will write a course to teach people how to do this.
Yep. And can I ask, I mean, if it's not too personal, you said there was a burn that happened, like there was a spark that ignited the fire for you to start speaking about this more publicly.
So,
do you want to share that story?
Yeah, so we ended COVID, and we actually moved into one of the projects we had designed with a builder. We did a joint venture with a builder, and we moved into there because it was close to the kids' schools. And anyway, and COVID was a great opportunity to reassess my health. So one of my loves in life with my three friends that I spoke about, where we traveled the world, we bought a house together, we set a business together. One of the joys in life that we had throughout university is we played squash. Like squash, it's probably an old sport, but we loved it.
Yeah, I loved
squash. Now, it's safe to say of the four boys, I was the worst at it. But having said all that, I had tried football, was hopeless, basketball, hopeless, but I found a sport, squash, that I was good at.
Yep.
Okay. So maybe I wasn't a team person. Maybe I was only good at playing. Anyway.
But you liked it as well, right?
Loved it. But I got injured badly at university where a player fell on my foot and I hurt my ankle badly and it was misdiagnosed at the time. So I went to the surgeon, doctors. For whatever reason, they didn't notice some hairline cracks. And it was put into a cast, cortisone injection. But by the time it was all worked out, oh my God, it's been misdiagnosed, it was too late to fix.
Okay.
They had already told me, Dom, it's too late. What we can do, so one surgeon said to me, what we can do is have some minor operation to tighten some sort of muscle because it was going to collapse one day. And then I heard words I did not want to hear. One surgeon said, I can correct your foot. We have to fuse it, pin it, plate it, but you'll never play squash again. You'll never play sport again either, right? Now, I'm a young 23-year-old, whatever, and I said, no chance, no. And they informed me in those early days, if you continue on this path and you don't have this surgery, you will probably live with pain for the rest of your life. Worse still, the foot will begin to turn and ultimately you won't be able to walk.
Wow.
Now, I'm 23, remember? Yeah, no worries. I'll live with pain. I'm a big boy. So I took that route. And I did live with pain for quite a long time. So around COVID time, the pain was unbearable. So my wife could see that I was in discomfort every time I walked.
Wow.
Yeah,
for that long?
Yeah, it was that long. It was, and she begged me for years, please have it operated, please, right? And for years I kept saying, I'm not having a foot that's fused, that I can't do things. But I had reached an age where sport wasn't an issue anymore and technology had improved. So I went back to the surgeon and he said, Dominic, technology's improved. We can pin it, we can plate it. You won't even, it'll take you a little bit of time to sort of come to terms with it, but you won't even know. Your body will adjust.
Yeah.
I said, really? And they go, yeah, technology's fantastic these days.
Amazing.
And I said, well, I'm at an age now and my wife is begging me. And to be honest with you, I don't want to be in a wheelchair and I want to walk and travel the world one day with my kids. And the last thing I want is not being able to walk to a gallery.
Of course.
But they did warn me, it's going to be painful. You'll be laid off for 12 weeks. You'll be in bed. It's not the most pleasant thing, but at the end of 12 weeks, you'll be in a cast and, within 6 months, you'll be walking and life will be fantastic. So I booked the surgery in March of 23. I booked the surgery. And I've had heaps of injuries with sport. So I've always had minor surgeries and I've always trained for surgery. So I did. Yep. And so I went into the surgery and it went well, really well. And I remember 12 weeks later having the big, huge cast removed and I cried because I saw my foot straight for the very first time. I saw it and it was really emotional. I've never saw my foot so perfect. Right. And I got home and over a period of a week or two, I just noted a little bit of tingling in the foot that shouldn't be there. Although I knew there was still a long road to recovery, I knew that shouldn't be there. And I suffered like a little blood clot, and other issues started to arise. But went back to the surgeon. I said, look, I don't know if this is normal. And he said, Dominic, let's do some x-rays. So we did some x-rays. This is June of 23. And he said, look, there is one pin. I would not normally take it out, but I want to go in and just move it. Dominic, it's just an overnight procedure. Don't stress. I said, oh, really? I've just had major surgery.
Yeah.
I really didn't want to do that. And plus, I put on a lot of weight because you were in bed for 6 months. I said, I don't feel healthy. I said, I don't feel like I could do that right now. And he said, Dominic, we operate on 80-year-old pensioners. You're going to be fine. You don't have to train for this.
Okay.
Anyway,
when you use the word trained, like mentally prepared?
Oh, because because someone's putting you under anaesthetic.
Yeah.
I want to have the best chance of coming out of that anaesthetic.
Okay.
Yeah, to train as in physical exercise and
Exercise,
can breathe properly and not carry weight.
Yep.
Yeah, that's and now.
So you mean actual physical training?
Yeah, physical.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, go to a gym, walk, do whatever you can, so you're in peak performance.
Got it.
And now I'm the opposite. I've put on weight. I'm unfit. This is not good, right?
Yeah.
So I started to panic. And so everyone kept saying to me, you're panicking for nothing. And I said, okay. And this is going to sound crazy, and this is a true story. I started to believe I would not survive the operation. And I started getting premonitions. So I started telling people, I won't make it. And they said, you've got to be joking. You just had major surgery. You had major surgery years ago. This is nothing. I said, I don't know, I'm having these premonitions. And so I remember telling my sister-in-law who worked in a hospital, and she said, you're just nervous. I said, but I can see clearly that there's a problem.
Something's going on.
Something is going on. And then I did the unthinkable and told my daughter, because I felt like I would never see her again. This is ridiculous, and I know it sounds absurd, but that's how I felt.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. And then we were scheduled to go into surgery at 9 a.m. on a particular morning, and we were called the night before saying, can you get in at 6? It's going to be a busy day. You're scheduled for 10. Just get in earlier.
Okay.
I thought, okay. So we woke up that morning, and I was extremely nervous. And it was dark. We got to the hospital, and we just felt the sense of chaos. Now, there was nothing chaos there. It's just how I felt. And so we went into one of the cubicles. The nurse prepped us up, and I felt completely uneasy. And my wife said, I'll stay with you, which is unusual because I've had heaps of operations and I was never nervous. First time ever. And 10 o'clock comes by and the surgery hasn't taken place. And I said to my wife, the car park's going to expire. Why don't you go home? Just go home. I'm going to be okay. I'm overreacting. I'm going to be okay. She goes, you sure? Yeah, go home. 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock comes, nothing. No surgery. I start getting massive headaches. I'm not feeling well. I call the nurse over.
Because you can't eat. Oh,
No,
you can eat.
I hadn't eaten from the day before.
Yep.
No fluids from the day before. And I don't get headaches, so this was an unusual experience to get one. I called the nurse over, and she kept apologising. I'm really sorry. There's issues in surgery. They're behind schedule. It's a chaotic day. And so before you know it, I'm saying, look, I'd like to speak to my anaesthetist. I'd like to speak to my surgeon because that's normal procedure before having an operation.
Of course.
But before you know it, it's 1 o'clock and the orderlies come and grab me and just take me straight to surgery. And I'm panicking saying, can I speak to my doctor?
Yeah.
Can I speak to my anaesthetist?
Because there's normally a prep-up process and,
So I get to the door of the surgery and the doctor quickly has a word to me and the anaesthetist, whom I've never met before, has a word to me. And I'm suddenly in the theatre. I'm thinking to myself, where's my pre-med? Where's everything that normally happens, right?
Where's the pep doc?
I mean, I'm not a doctor, but the procedures I've been through, this was none of the procedures I've ever been through. And then there's a little bit of an argument, not an argument, but a discussion between the anaesthetist and the nurse because she's put a mask on that's too big or too small. And I'm looking at the ceiling, a typical architect. I look up and there's a pretty pattern there. And I said to myself, that's the last pattern I'm ever going to see in my life.
Okay.
And I'm looking up And the next thing I remember is my name being yelled at. Dominic, Dominic, Dominic. And I clearly remember it going from black to seeing my surgeon's face right there and the anaesthesist just there. And then all of these nurses behind. And I'm looking around and I look down and my shirt's been cut, as in, with scissors. It's been cut. And there are paddles and things on my chest.
No way.
And the surgeon goes to me, say your name. Where are you? And I said, I'm here. I'm Dominic. I said, how'd the operation go? We haven't operated on you. I said, what do you mean you haven't operated on me? And he said to me, you flatlined. I said, what does that mean? He said, you died on the table. I said, but you said I haven't been operated on. He said, no, we hadn't started the operation and the anaesthetist did a great job. And I didn't understand, what do you mean he did a great job? To bring you back. And by the way, you're going to be in a lot of pain tomorrow. And then I said, I don't understand what's going on. So basically the surgeon went to start the procedure on my foot, looked up, flatlined after the anaesthetic was administered. He quickly stopped and commenced CPR and broke 3 or 4 of my ribs, ripped my muscles, and basically saved my life. And I came to.
Wow.
And this is all just, you got to understand, I'm drowsy now. I'm not actually understanding what they're saying. I'm just basically saying, oh yeah, okay. I don't understand what you're saying, but, all good.
Yeah.
And then I didn't understand what was happening, but for the next hour I was talking to a nurse. I think from a cognitive point of view, they wanted to see that I was okay.
Yep.
Everyone looked like ghosts. Everyone was white as, stressed out. And I remember when the nurse that was looking after me on the ward came upstairs crying, as if she wanted to see me. And I just didn't understand what was going on. I really didn't understand what was going on. And they brought me back to like an intensive care section. And then they started doing tests on me for the next day or so. Heart tests, is he allergic to something? The upshot of all is there's nothing wrong with you, Dominic. There's nothing wrong with you. Wow. I went to see a cardiologist and he just looked at me and said, do you understand what I'm saying to you? There is nothing wrong with you. And then I understood what happened. So I won't name the hospital, but I know exactly what happened that day. And people think that when you have these experiences that your life flashes behind, I didn't have any of that. I just had this overwhelming feeling that I would have left my kids and wife in a really bad position. Silly things. Didn't know my passwords, bank issues. What about the mortgage? Not what about the things in my life I want to do. It was how I would have left them. That really, really disturbed me. And when I got home eventually, I can't describe it to you, but I couldn't move. I literally couldn't go to the toilet. I couldn't, the spasms and the pain were unbearable. There was no surgery. This is from the damage to the chest, right? Which would heal. I knew that. But it's very uncomfortable to not be able to move. And every breath you take, you spasm. Anyway.
So can I ask, what was it, an overdose with the anesthetic?
They used the word, had
overuse or?
It's a severe vagal response. Basically, I'm not a doctor, but when you faint, you have these veins that talk to the brain or whatever. I don't know the technical term, but to protect you, you faint. Okay. And I had what they call a severe vagal response, meaning I probably faint. It's like fainting during the anesthetic. But these are just words. Trust me, right? They're just words, right? I basically, fainted to the point where I couldn't come back out of it. Okay. But there's no reason for that. There was nothing wrong with me. I didn't push it. And people always say to me, why didn't you push it further to get answers? I tried, but I would hit a wall. So you got to understand also, I'm in pain. I've just gone through severe trauma. I get home. The last thing on my mind is
doing root cause analysis.
Well, I was getting calls from them. I got a call from the anaesthetist saying, could I give him a second chance? This time he'll have this procedure. This time we'll have this. So I got that call. I got the call from the hospital administrator. Yeah. right? You know, but they want the cause I wanted to get, right? So at that point there, I started to spiral out of, well, not out of control is the wrong word. I'm mentally gone. I can't exercise. I can't move. I've put on weight. My work is, I can't do my work. It's been almost 8 months. I'm really mentally stuffed. So, and then I'm starting getting some issues with clotting, and because you're not moving, you're not
moving, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
taking injections every day for the clotting,
Wow.
self-administered, that in itself I wasn't happy about.
Yep.
So I go to see my GP and I say to him, please tell me what I can do to facilitate, to get better. What can I do? And he basically said to me, nothing, no one's coming to help you, Dominic. There's no help. There's nothing. I said, well, I don't understand what you're saying. He said, basically, you need to recover and then you can start on a program. I said, but I can't wait. I need help now. And then I asked him one question. I said, if I start exercising, will I damage myself any further? He said, no, you won't damage yourself any further, but you'll be in a lot of pain. You're not capable of doing that. So I decided to start exercising on an exercise bike. I decided I read up everything I could on intermittent fasting, because I'd heard that if you intermittently fast, the body, on the day that you fast, the brain tells the stomach, there's nothing to do today.
Yep.
So let's go and repair the body. Okay. So I did all this research on intermittent fasting that I really started to believe, hang on, this could help me. So I started doing intermittent fasting, exercising, and before you know it, months went by, I had dropped half the weight I had put on, not all of it.
Yep.
And the pain from I remember I had to go in for that surgery.
Yeah, yeah.
Gone.
So that pain,
never, gone forever. I thought,
how weird.
I said, Jesus Christ, I've just gone through this whole trauma and I didn't even need to have that operation.
Yeah.
What's going on in life? What's going on? And then went back to my GP. He said, Dominic, let me explain something to you. If you go to a mechanic to fix your car, what's he going to do? I said, he's going to fix my car. Yes, that's right. If you go to a restaurant and the chef's there, what's the chef going to do for you? I said, he's going to cook me a meal. Okay. So when you went back to your surgeon and you said, I have pain in my foot, what's he going to do? I said, oh, shit, he's going to operate. Yes, that's what they do. He didn't say, oh, I think you should go for a massage. They don't that's not what he does. Do you understand, Dominic?
Yeah.
I said, Jesus. And that's when it hit me. You need to ask more questions. You need to seek a second opinion. He didn't do anything wrong, the surgeon. To this day, I'm very grateful. He saved my life, and he was right to suggest operating. All I'm saying about life today and any decisions in your life is seek alternative. I learned the power of seeking a second opinion. I learned the power of finding out answers for yourself. I learned that if I don't know how to do something, I go and search for it. So essentially, I got myself back on track. I did it.
Yep.
So
we can't always rely
I
on
went to
experts.
physio when I was told don't go to physio. I went to acupuncture when I was told it would be used. I did it all. So to reflect on, I came out of hospital. Like I said, I suddenly realised I need to get my affairs into order so that if anything ever happened, the family, is okay. But I always tell people that's not what triggered major change in my life. You would think the near-death experience was. So straight after that, and I don't want to identify the client, but I had found a project for a client and made him quite a lot of money while injured, like on phone call. And I won't go into great details other than to say that the client decided after 30 years not to give the commission to the practice. So I had found him a project, bought under value, made a lot of money, and he decided that the fee, the architectural commission fee, was too high.
Wow.
So he suggested that he would take me on board to run the project, but not the practice. So would I project manage and run it with another architect?
Really?
Yeah. But then he said something very powerful and said, I don't think I value, or you're not, not to these exact words, but I don't value you. So I suddenly realized I had no like self-worth. I felt really, after 30 years,
Yeah, for 30 years,
that was
yeah.
me. And that's when I got really angry. My wife thought I was angry because we didn't buckle and reduce the fee. I wasn't angry about that.
Yeah.
I was angry about the perception.
Of course.
After all this time,
Of course.
you know? And so,
Especially a client that's been there for a long time, right?
yeah, and to his credit, he was more concerned that our relationship would be broken because of it.
Okay.
And I said, no, it won't be broken. I don't respect what you've done, but we'll still, because when you have clients for that long, they become your friends. Let's face it.
So from his perspective, he was making
It was
like a transactional decision or a numbers decision.
In his great words, it's not personal, it's business.
Yeah, okay.
Not personal, it's not personal, it's business. It's transactional, it's the principle.
But the bottom line was he didn't value you as an architect, you felt.
Well, in this particular case, my wife was going to be the architect. I was going to project manage the whole thing when I was recovered. So he was happy to take me, but not Marie, the design fee. We wanted to be reduced. But for years I had done his work and he could see that the value of design, and he could see that, right? So we just couldn't conjure up, where this had all come from. But that one statement of value hit me harder than the operation, because then I really felt useless. And so at that point there, I thought, what am I going to do now? What do I do? So I rang him the next day and I said, look, I want to tell you something. First of all, I do understand you don't want to use us. That's fine, right? But the person he had was going to commission, was inexperienced. It was extremely difficult. So I said, look, don't use us, but don't use them. Go to a practice that understands this type of work, because it's difficult and you're going to lose a lot of money. And he ignored me. So that's the end of 2023. We're now middle of 2025. 2 years have gone by. He's lost 5 times the amount of money he would have paid us. They still haven't got permits. That it's like to this day.
Wow.
So, he didn't understand what I was saying and he didn't value what I was doing. But it was the greatest gift he ever gave me, because up until that point, I was a yes person. Yes to this, yes to this, yes to this, yes. And from that day onwards, I had decided that I would learn the word no. Mm-hmm. No. So something unusual happened there straight thereafter. So I was still, on crutches. I was still not moving quite well. And I was watching this young man do a property transaction on the internet.
Okay.
On Instagram.
Okay.
But I was just watching him.
Yeah.
This young guy in Queensland. And I was watching it and I was thinking to myself, what a great young guy to be posting this commercial transaction. So he's posting that he's going to, with a syndicate of people, he's going to buy this property and he's going to do this, he's going to do that. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. And as I'm watching him over many, many weeks, the tone started to change from optimism to pessimism to, we might not buy this. And then I thought to myself, what's he doing? This is a great site. And anyway, I don't think he understands the potential of this site. But he never named the site because it was going to auction.
Of course.
So I put on my investigation hats and started watching the reels.
And try to find the place.
And being as naive as he was, as good a young guy as he was, he would mention the franchise of the agency. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I had the franchise. I had Queensland. Then I noticed a business behind him when he was posting on site.
Yeah.
I tracked the business. And then he mentioned a suburb. Before you knew it, I was on Street View. And on Street View, I just kept driving around from Melbourne on Google Street View, and I found it.
Okay.
Then I found the listing. Once I found the listing, I got up one Saturday morning and I could not help myself. I started drawing. And I drew the site, how many little factories you can get on there. I got into the branding, the marketing. I got so excited. This went on for 8 hours. 8 hours. I then tracked down the mentors that this young boy had. And I don't know why I did this, but I emailed it to them. And I said, here, this is a gift. This is not me soliciting in big words. I am not soliciting because I'm still angry from my client. I am not soliciting work. I don't want work. It's just a gift. The young kid's about to give up. Tell him not to give up. Here, take this. All right? And the next morning I woke up and I wasn't finished. I need to work out on branding and marketing. I need to work out the name of this new enterprise that they're going to build, you know?
Yeah.
How are they going to market it? I just got carried away and emailed the second lot and said, oh, by the way, here's more. And they did something really wonderful. They contacted me and said, this is extremely appreciative. Wonderful boys, and they're the boys from the Unemployable media group.
Oh, it was from that.
was
Okay.
them.
There you go.
And they said, you know, we would love for you to come and join us on the Gold Coast in February. So I wasn't sure that I could travel.
Yeah.
We want you to be in the room with all our students because they were starting up this new enterprise.
Yeah.
We want you to be there. It's a gift. And I was nervous. I don't know anyone. Who are these people?
Yep.
Should I go? Why would I go? And my wife could say, just go. Go.
Yeah.
And, you know, at that stage, you know, I was pretty angry with where I was. And I started to get healthier. And I rang my doctor. He said, yeah, you can travel come February. And about a month before I travelled, the boys rang me and said, would you sit in on a couple of coaching calls? I said, yeah. And I started to resonate with the students. I went to Queensland. And then I realised something more powerful, that I was finally in the room with people like me. So after all these years, I found my people.
You found your people. Yeah.
And it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
I thought, like that client was not my people, even after 30 years.
Yeah.
These are my people. And I started looking for more of these people. And I realized that you have to be in the room
Yeah.
when an opportunity knocks. And there was no opportunity in terms of work. It was just when it comes. And I took the parachute off and I jumped. And I started working with many, many people. Not charging any money. I just started helping as many people as I could. Anyone that rang, I just kept helping.
Yeah.
And the more I helped, the more I gave, the more came back. I just couldn't believe it. I said, what's going on? I'm supposed to be helping all these people, and they're
Coming back to you.
They're
Yeah.
coming back to me. And so I suddenly realized, you know, what do I do like, who am I? What is my superpower? What is it that after all these years, what have I been doing? And it always came back to this concept, because one day someone said, how can you see the invisible? You always see stuff that no one sees.
Ah, okay. I know where you're going.
And that person said to me, yeah, you're just an invisible architect. And that's where the persona of the invisible
Invisible
architect
architect
came from,
came.
because I see opportunities where others can't see them. And that's what I was coaching these students. And I still love it to this day. I love seeing what you can't see. I just love it because it creates opportunities. If you're a first-time home buyer, developer, anyone, you know, I can teach you to see the invisible. That's the skill I have.
Yep.
Many architects have probably got it. And so the journey began. And so I started posting and posting, and more people came asking for help. And then I realized life as that little boy, you know, what if I set up a course? This was purely for first-time buyers. First time, I wanted them to have a home.
Yeah,
I didn't want them to be where. So this was all for them. I sat down to write a course to teach them how to collaborate with other couples.
That's my dream as well. But
That's how it all started. And I started sitting down to write this course, and I looked at all the courses online, and I realized all the courses online, they're not charlatans. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're not teaching the macro, which is the art of property development. They're only teaching you segments. You need to know the whole way to develop it, from sourcing a property, how to read a contract, dealing with real estate agents, project managing. It isn't just, here's a property. So that became a skill I wanted to teach somebody. So I started on Instagram. I started posting, but I put a link that if anyone wants to have a call with me, I called it a discovery call, ring me and we'll have a chat. What I didn't understand at the time was that people that were ringing me weren't just first-time home buyers. They were people from all places. People who would ring me and say, look, I really want to learn how to do what you do, but I have no money. Do I have a place in your future community? Well, you do. You're telling me you've got great ideas. You've got a great way of executing. You just lack the capital. There will be people with money. So you'd be great with them, right?
Yep.
Real estate agents would ring me and say, Dom, I didn't realize that all the potential in the properties that we list, we just didn't understand the potential. Maybe if we did your course, we would be better real estate agents.
Got it. Yeah.
God, I didn't think you could be potential people. Excellent. Then I started getting buyers advocates ringing me, can we go to lunch? Okay, what can I do for you? We're buyers advocates. We source property for people. We just realized that all the properties we look at, and we said 8 of them weren't suitable, half of them were suitable if we had only known the principles that you're trying to teach.
Yep.
Can we learn? So now there's buyers advocates, there's real estate agents, there's all these different groups ringing me. And I had almost finished the course, which was Christmas of last year, when I suddenly realized I have to start again and rewrite this course as a macro course. Basically, teach all of these groups of people how to do the same thing, but from their point of view.
Got it.
And so it's going to be released in the next 8 weeks. And basically, I think property development is a 4-step process. Not 1, but 4. And the 4-step process that I have used my entire life is step 1, storytelling. Storytelling starts from the day you see an opportunity. And this is what I do. I go there and I look at it. And if I see a spark, something of interest, a story I can tell through design, I start convincing myself, this is it, Dom. So it's the story I tell myself. But it doesn't end there. I then leave. And if there was an architect I had to go to, in my case, it's my wife, Marie, I found an opportunity. I have a story to tell you. This is what the site can do.
Amazing.
This is the brand. This is where I'm going. It's going to be for single mums, whatever the story is.
Okay.
Do you believe me? Are you going to buy into this story?
Okay.
She does. Yeah. I'm in. Excellent. Okay, the story doesn't end there. We now have to do that with diagrams and drawings.
I love this.
Okay?
Yep.
So, who's this for? We set up an avatar. Who's the avatar? Who's the final? Who's this going to? Is it this person, that person? So we design our building, our units, our developments for the avatar. So we're really clear. We're really strong on the storytelling. It doesn't stop there. When we submit to council, we don't submit the mandatory checklist, architectural drawings, these drawings. We have a story to tell. So we do get all the mandatory things, the architectural drawings and everything they require, a town planning consultant's report. I then do an architect, or I call it an architectural statement, but basically it's a storybook.
It's a story. Okay.
Here you go. Here's the story. Once upon a time. And I tell them the story.
That's so cool.
So when they get it, so I this is what I'm imagining. A town planner is sitting in their office, and I was told by someone who works in accounts 20 years ago, they're sitting in their office, they've got 30 applications on their desk, they have people screaming at them, where's my permit, where's my permit? We have a story to tell. When it lands on their desk, they look at it and go, oh wow, this will be interesting. I'm not saying it's a story that will guarantee us a permit. It can be a challenging story. It could be a fight. It could be who does Dominic think he is proposing this? But suddenly the planner has a story to tell.
Yeah.
So in other words, she goes, I'll say she or he, they go in every day, rubber stamp, checklist. And then this brash guy comes in with, hang on, he wants to break the rules. He wants to do this, wants to do that. Oh my God, all his documentation is fantastic. And we enter into a dance.
Yeah.
It's a dialogue.
It's a dialogue.
It's a dialogue, right? But ultimately, we push through because she's got to be convinced. I say she because that was the last person I've been dealing with. They have to be convinced of the story. They then got to convince their team leader. I need an advocate at council to convince their team leader. I can only do that through storytelling.
Yep.
The story is then told, and we ultimately get the permit. All right? The story doesn't end. We've now got to convince all of the consultants at the next phase, the construction stage. We have budgets. We have this. We have a story to tell through the building. It doesn't end there. The storytelling continues. We now got to engage real estate agents to understand our avatar, our story. The marketing, the branding, our story. It just continues until ultimately it's branded and the world knows the story. But it doesn't stop there.
Doesn't stop there.
No. When I finish a project and I hand over a building, I spend 2 or 3 days doing a handover manual. Here is the story of the home you just bought. Here is the story, right? The story being also the manual. This is the machine that you bought and this is how it runs. Here is the red bin. Here is the yellow bin. Here is the green bin. The green bin and the yellow bin, they sit here. Here is the alarm pad. These are the digits, the codes. This is the person that installed it if you have a problem. I go through the entire house to make their life as easy as possible.
That's
And the
amazing.
story ends with, here's a hamper or a book, and the end of the story. So my course 1 is storytelling. Now, does everybody have to do that? No, you don't have to do that. You can just ignore all of that and just go and design a building. But that has been my, the number one reason my success rate is 100% in terms of getting approvals, because I have a story to tell.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to teach people how to do that. So storytelling. The second course is the one that everybody wants to know is, okay, you're the invisible architect. So I analysed all my projects and I have come up with 22 different ways that I see opportunities in a property. Some are conventional, some not conventional, that will allow you to see opportunities just like me.
Okay.
Okay, so you have a story to tell, you found the right property like I taught you, but that isn't enough. Here, the third course is project managing. So now you have the property, but I have to teach you how to read the contract, how to engage the architects, who are all the players throughout the whole journey to the end, to the day you hand over keys. So project managing is the third part. And the fourth course to complete the art of property development is tracking the project. So while the project is underway, you have all your numbers lined up, your feasibility basically, and building is fluid. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care how much you have tied in all of your quotes. They will move. They will move.
Of course.
Excuse me for while I get
No, that's okay.
Oh, excuse me. They will move, and you have to assess them, and you have to track them, and you have to move numbers around. So if you're over budget, so basically, here are all the numbers of the project. Column A is estimated costs, feasibility. This is how much money we're going to make. The second column is actuals. Oh, we're on target. Things are going well. Oh my God, we're over budget on this one. And the third column is, all right, anything below us that hasn't been paid for, relook at them because we're over budget here.
Okay.
Tracking the project. So I call that the art of property development. Now, what's being taught online at the moment is not those 4 items: storytelling, identifying opportunities, tracking the project management. What's being taught is one or the other, just tactics. Tactics isn't enough. If I said to you, I know 5 suburbs in Melbourne where they're going to go up 200% tomorrow morning, and you learn that behavior, I teach you, and you go there and you buy that property, then you're going to stand there and come back to me and say, hey, Dominic, I bought the property.
What do I do now?
What do I do now? That's not development.
Yeah.
And so when you see courses being taught, I will teach you how to do a joint venture project. Oh, so you've taught me how to have a tennis player on the other side of the net. But what about how to play the tennis game? Oh no, well, you just have to bring an architect. or I'll teach you how to buy properties with options.
Yep.
Yeah, but once I buy, what do I do then? Oh, well, you'll have to find people to help you. this is the part I don't understand. You either teach the whole lot or don't teach
Don't
anything
teach
at
it
all.
at all. Yeah.
Now, it's true to say that there will be people that do these courses learning tactics and they will get through. I say, good on them, well done, but you're still leaving money on the table because there are things you would have done wrong that you're unaware of. So even if you made 100,000, 150, could you have made more? Is there something that you did wrong? Could you have asked for a longer settlement? You asked for a 60-day settlement. If you had only asked for 120, right, at $4,000 a month of holding costs, is that another 20,000?
Yeah.
Or we didn't think to ask that. Just, these are all the things. Now, I'm in an unusual position of having worn many hats. Architect's hat, a domestic and commercial builder's hat, a developer's hat, an investor's hat, a buyer's hat, a seller's hat. I've sold heaps of my own projects using storytelling. And I even have my sub-agent's license. So you can imagine the course I'm offering is a course filled with questions from all of those people. So the issues or problems or constraints that you may face on a project as the developer on the same project are different to me, the architect on the project. Can you imagine the power of both those
People coming together.
and having those answers in the one course?
Yep.
It's powerful.
Absolutely.
So I didn't understand where I was going with this course until I suddenly realized I have something to say.
Yeah.
And just going back on the storytelling, probably the greatest, it's not even a testimonial, I would say email I ever got was from a planner at council. And so people might say, oh, Dominic, it's a bit of bullshit, this storytelling thing. But we got this email at Christmas about a year ago, and it was a senior planner at a local council where we do a lot of work. And this is how it read. It read this. Hello, Dominic and Marie. I'm just letting you know that today is my last day at ABC Council. I just wanted to say before I leave that for the past 10 years, it's been a joy working on your projects.
That's awesome.
We have battled, we have fought, we have argued, but most of all, I have drooled over your work.
Wow.
If you're ever in CDEF Council, where I am now the senior planner, I'd love to see your work there. And I said to my wife, I thought she hated our guts. We've been arguing for 10 years. It's been a battle. And then I realized that it wasn't a battle. She would go to work every day and have her hat on, which was her hat, which was her job. Right? That's her job.
That's her job.
Her job is next, tick, 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 next, tick, tick, tick. And then comes our application.
Yep.
She takes the hat off. And not for the first time, but one of many applications that are good, she puts on her town planner's hat on, the hat she went to school with, the hat she's always wanted to practice. I am now in the arena and I'm going to battle this guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so she gets to be the planner she wanted to be. Just like when a client says, we give you license, you guys are the architects. That's joy.
That's just amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of ticking the boxes and having the most ordinary applications, I'm not saying I'm the best architect in the world because we challenge, but she gets to challenge back.
Yep.
You don't want to put car parks on it. You tell me why you don't want to put car parks. It's a battle.
Yeah. Like you said, the dance, right?
It's the dance, right? And so people underestimate the power of giving joy to other people in their lives. So, and that brings me to where I am today. You know, I'm adamant I want to get this out for better or for worse. Worst case scenario, my young son has decided to be an architect. He's at university.
Amazing.
And I said, Max, if no one wants to learn anything from me, you have the best tutoring in the world. All right, go to university and I'll teach you life outside of university. And we go back to my episode at the hospital. It was an awful experience. But the experience of being rejected was just as bad as well. And sometimes doors will open. You just got to understand that when they open, you need to go through that door. And one of the greatest advices I ever got was, imagine yourself in a rocking chair, and you're 80 something years old. You're lucky enough to live to 80 years old, and you look back in life, what will you regret? And so I did that exercise one night. I closed my eyes and I sat there and I looked back in life. I thought, okay, what am I going to regret? And what had hit me the most was I wasn't going to regret any of my stuff-ups, any of my failures. The fact that we didn't move into the converted church, the fact that we didn't do this, we didn't do that. All that kept coming up was everything I didn't start.
Yep.
Everything I didn't start. Yep. Nothing to do with money. Oh my God, I said I was going to go to Italy. I didn't go. Oh my God, I said I was going to start a business. I didn't do that. Oh my God, I said I was going to write a course. Oh my God, I was going to do... I'm 85 years old. It's too late.
It's too late. What did they say?
It's too late.
90% is showing up, right?
Yeah. And that was the most powerful exercise I've ever done in my life. When it was, the words were, it's too late.
It's too late.
And so I did a bit of reading to find out if this is normal. And I found some nurses that were on the deathbeds of people.
I've read this one.
And they asked them, what do people say? And they said the same thing. It's not all the money they lost, all the money they didn't make. It was everything they didn't start.
Yeah,
it was
that they could have done, but they didn't do.
Or didn't start, or could have done, or didn't ask that girl out, or didn't marry that. It was all the things they didn't. Yeah. Funnily enough, it was more prevalent in men than women, but it was the same. And in men, the second one was that they hadn't spent more time with their kids and family.
Wow.
Not so much in women, because women nurture. So that wasn't as prevalent in women. But that hit me really hard. So those two little things make me present with the kids. I try and work from home when I can. When they get home, I'm there. When they leave, even for a glimpse, just to get a glimpse of them, because it's not forever.
It's not.
One day I'm going to wish I trip over their towels in the morning and not get in. I'm going to wish... so I'm really, really present and understand, because there's this famous, it's not a famous saying, but it's this, right? You are exactly where you're meant to be from when you thought 10 years ago, you said you were going to be somewhere. You are there now.
You are there now.
Once you understand that you are exactly where you should be, so if you're 40 years old and you're saying, oh God, I wish I was 30, you are, when you're 50, you're going to wish you were 40. So in other words, you are exactly where you're meant to be. You'll know it down the track. Down the track, you'll know it. So every day I say to myself, I am exactly where I'm meant to be.
That's a good perspective.
It's a really good perspective. It just grounds you a bit more. Things still go wrong.
Yep.
Life's full of ups and downs. But one of the most... the things I can say to anybody is learning to let go without a parachute is very, very hard.
Very hard.
But if you can learn to do that, you find, Seth Godin, one of my favorite authors, what's he saying is, got some good news and bad news. The good news is, the bad news is you've jumped over a cliff. I think he says something like that. And the good news is you've got no parachute. You've got to take risks.
You've got to take risks.
You've got to take risks. So I like that, and to be yourself. Like people always say to me, I saw you online. It's you're very casual. It's who I am.
It's who you are. You got to be.
As they say, they're not making any more me's. I'm the only me. Somebody will be me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people who don't like you will not like you anyway, right? So
No.
you just might as well be you.
No, I don't hate anybody. I'm really interested in lots of people's opinions. I might not agree with them.
Yep.
But I'm one of these people that are pretty open-minded. I love giving people 1 chance, 2 chances, 3 chances. We're all going to stuff up.
Yep.
We're not. We make mistakes. But I don't know if that story is interesting, but that's been my journey. But I will tell you something. Throughout my life, and people say, have you been successful? I don't think I've been successful. I've just enjoyed the ride, right? I've always wondered, who am I? Because there are people that are born super intelligent, like just like, where do they? I'm not that person. And then there are people that are gifted, and I'm not that person. And so I've always wondered, what got me to meet these mentors at high school? What got me to learn how to draw? what got me to Melbourne University, one of the best universities in Australia, I struggled. Like, you know, I almost failed physics until I found this little book and taught myself physics, right? All these little things I kept saying, where did this come from? And I really didn't understand where I belonged. You know, people call themselves entrepreneurs, they call themselves this. I felt lost for years as to where I belong, right?
Yep.
Until I found one book. And the book, and I highly recommend it if people want to go out and source it, and the book is called Grit, Grit,
Yep.
by Angela Duckworth.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that book, and I bought it, and I did not put it down until it was finished. And I remember reading that, and at the end of it, I knew who I was.
Okay.
I'm not smart, I'm not intelligent, and I'm not gifted, but I have grit, you know? And I tell people out there, that's all you need.
That's all you need.
The most successful people in the world have had tenacity, grit.
Yes.
They just keep pushing and they keep pushing, you know, and they find the answers. And so I felt at peace after reading that book.
Reading that book.
Because I don't have to be labelled an entrepreneur. I think it's overrated. It's such high pressure people put themselves under when they call themselves an entrepreneur. Do you think that's overrated?
Yeah, because everyone wants to be, right? But not everyone becomes successful in it.
No, and really, the true definition of an entrepreneur is someone that really changes the game. They really make massive changes in the world, right? You can have entrepreneurial pursuits. You know, you can be inclined. And I'm not having to go at anyone that calls themselves an entrepreneur, but really, are we? You know? Aren't we just freelancers or self-employed you know what I mean? Really, at the end of the day?
Yeah, true.
So I've always been uncomfortable
With that term.
Oh yeah, I would
Yeah,
never
yeah,
ever
yeah.
call myself that. Never. I think there's probably 5 or 6 that I know of in the world that are, and we all know who they are.
Yeah.
You know, so Elon Musk, you got Jeff Bezos, you had Steve Jobs. You know these guys, but it came at a price.
It did.
I ain't prepared to pay that price. So if it means calling myself an entrepreneur and boasting that it came at a price, you know, no thanks.
Yeah.
No, you can have that label. You know, I came up with my own label. If you want to hear it, it's very
Yes,
funny.
please.
So one day I thought to myself, I said to my wife, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want anyone to call me that. And she goes, what do you do? I said, I've got ideas. I've got heaps of ideas in life.
Ideas, man.
And she goes, well, what do you do with these ideas? No, I come up with these ideas. And she goes, but you got to do something with these ideas. Are they new ideas? Are they old? I said, some are new and some are old, right? And she goes, well, so what do you do? Do you breathe life into ideas? I said, yeah, I breathe life into new ideas. And that got me thinking, right? I'm thinking, I breathe life into new ideas. There's oxygen into ideas. So I looked up the atomic number for oxygen, and it was 8.
Okay.
8 happens to be my lucky number,
Okay.
and 8 happens to be almost the symbol of infinity.
Infinity, yeah.
which I love. So I said to my wife, I know where I am. She goes, what are you? I said, I'm an atomic 8 creative.
Oh.
All right. She goes, really? I said, yeah. I said, I am the first person in the world, an atomic 8 creative.
I like that.
So I registered the domain name, right?
I like it.
And then she goes, well, I'm an atomic 8 architect. I said, I think there might be some atomic 8 plumbers out there in the world. Or atomic. So that's who I am. I'm an atomic. And as wanky as that sounds, I feel more comfortable. There's less pressure.
Less pressure. Yeah.
Way less pressure than, you know, because the minute you say I'm an entrepreneur, the next question is, so what have you done? Don't you think?
Yeah. That's true. I never thought of
Yeah.
it that.
So that's my story.
I love the story. Thank you for sharing that.
That's all right.
So, for the average Aussie who hasn't got a job, who's renting at the moment, this is, I mean, I've been trying to tackle this problem, right? Can they get over and achieve the Australian dream? I know it's a broad question.
Yeah. So if you think about it, what's required to buy a home is a deposit, right?
Okay.
A deposit. So I acknowledge that to raise a deposit today is so much different to when I had to raise a deposit, right? So therefore, the maths would say it's too hard to do it by yourself to raise the deposit, right? So then, if the deposit is $200,000, would it be okay to say that if I got together with you and you came up with 100 and I came up with 100, would that be easier? Yeah, that would be reasonable to say, right? Okay, so if we got together to buy a property, it would be easier than if I went and got the property. The serviceability of 2 or 4 is easier than a single couple.
Yes.
Okay, so having said all that, having learned and heard what Dominic said, would it be unreasonable to see if we could learn to source a property where we could perhaps become developers? We don't want to be developers, but we're going to force ourselves to develop a property where we could possibly end up with a property each. So we would need a deposit to buy that property. And if it takes 8 years to raise that on your own, that means it could take 4 years if we do it together, or if we could borrow from family. Is that unreasonable to accelerate? No, that's not unreasonable. So if we sought the services of someone like Dominic or any other person that could help us, and we sourced the property and we learned the behavior, could we undertake a development where we buy a property, we apply for a development approval, we subdivide, we have uplift. So now there's the property that we bought is no longer worth $1 million, it's worth 1.3. Suddenly there's equity in there.
Yep.
Right? There's $300, $1,000 of equity. We go to the bank and the bank's going to say, where's your deposit? Well, there's 300,000 there plus the money we've already put in. We want to now subdivide it and go our separate ways. So
There you
now
go.
that deposit you first raised isn't enough, but now it is because you've got money built in. Have I made sense? How
That
could
makes
work?
sense to me.
Now, I know it works because I've done it for people.
Yep.
Number one. Number two, I bought a property only a couple of years ago where I did exactly that. I bought the property. I subdivided the land off. People thought that this land couldn't be subdivided. There was immediate equity of 400,000, and I did the sums. If two couples had bought that property, one couple would have ended up with the land owing them about 400,000, valued at 7, and the other couple would have ended up with the house owing them 700, and it's worth, I don't know, $1 million. So they earned the exact amount of equity.
Yep.
But they would have had to have made the decision at the beginning, whether it was a flip of a coin or whatever, who's going to get the land and who's going to get the unrenovated house. Those things can be worked out.
Worked out, yes.
Right?
Yep.
But the point is, it requires courage, because what I'm asking them to do is take on the role of the developer, the 25%,
Baked in.
they will return,
Yep.
and possibly run it and take the whole 25%. Or if they both work, give up some. Give up some means, okay, offer someone the opportunity to project manage that for 5%.
5%.
Or 3% or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm a great believer that that's how you got to do it. Now, even further, 2 couples to buy one. What if 6 units were built on the site and 6 couples got together?
So there's opportunity out there.
Yeah. I just think, people always say that there's no financial literacy taught at school.
Schools.
But there's no it's the wrong word, property literacy, but there's no understanding of how property works. I mean, if I had to tell people, you know what subdivision is? It's really, really simple. This is what subdivision is. When you go to a restaurant and if they don't make their cakes, they buy them, right? So the chef goes to the wholesaler and says, I'm buying a cake.
Yep.
And I'm going to pay you $40 for that cake. The chef goes back to the restaurant and slices that up into 4.
Yep.
Now, he's not going to sell those slices for $10 each, is he?
No.
Because he's paid $40.
Yep.
Why would he want to get $40 back?
Yep.
He's going to sell each slice for, say, $15. So now it's going to return $60.
Yep.
He subdivided the cake. So that's the metaphor. He bought a property. He's now subdivided the property, and the parts are greater than the whole.
Amazing example.
Right?
Yep.
That's it. Now, I can take that further and say, well, what if we embellish the cake to have a point of difference? Mm-hmm. We put some icing, we can do bits and pieces to it, we can cut it up into 4, but now we can ask for $18 a slice.
Okay.
Excellent. That's a great idea. I've got a better idea. I saw an opportunity to cut that cake up, not into 4 slices, but into 8. And I've got a story to tell about that cake, and we can still ask $18 a slice. But now we've got 8 slices.
Yep.
What's the story? Well, it could be that it's royal chocolate, cocoa beans from, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes. Yeah.
That is the same principle. That's all we do. We buy cakes and we just wholesale. Now, there's a saying in property development, which is so important. The money is not made at the end of the project. The money is made at the beginning
When you buy.
when you buy. When he bought the cake for $40, he was guaranteed he was going to make money. If he had paid $60 or $70 for that cake, he would have gone back to the restaurant and they would have said to him, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
We can't cut this up into 4 anymore. Well, can we cut it up any more? No. We're going to have to do something special to those 4 slices. Do you think they'll pay more?
Yeah.
They may. This is the architect conversation.
Yeah.
They may. What can we do to those slices? And that's the conversation we have for people that do that, by the way.
Yeah.
What can we do with the property you just bought? It's really only a 2-unit site.
And when you said you've got like 100% DA approval, right? And
It's not because I'm gifted.
yeah, that's what I mean. So like you're putting together a course. Is there a checklist that the average person can go through to?
There is a checklist. There are things you look at. That it always comes back to the principle that if you buy well, everything else will take care of itself. If you pay the right price, everything else is execution.
Okay.
Okay. Now, property development in itself is a risk. It's speculative. There is an element that things could go wrong, of course. Otherwise, it wouldn't be speculative.
Of course.
And everyone would do it. There is no guarantees, but there are safeguards.
Yeah, like a backup plan.
Yeah. So I'm very conservative. I know there are people that develop property, they roll the dice, pay top dollar, ride the market and make a killing. I can't work like that. So when I buy a property, plan A is utopia. We're going to carry out this.
Yeah.
I have a plan B. It's not going to work out. Now we'll do this. I happen to have a plan C because that didn't work. Now, if you find a project that has A, B, C, and D, oh my God, you're laughing. Because it's not how much money you're going to make. Sorry, it's not how much money you're going to make, but it's the opportunities you have.
Opportunities, yeah.
So I'm conservative. So I would never buy a property where there's only plan A.
Yeah.
That's why I steer away from the conservative approach. So if you rang me and said, I found a site, it can put 2 units. Good news, we're not buying it. Why? Because everybody can see 2 units.
Yeah.
But hang on, let me drive by and have a look. Oh my God, I think I can get 3 on there. Or I see something unusual. I've got to be able to see that second bit.
Yep.
Because that's the safeguard.
I love that. Okay.
That is critical to my way of thinking, and hence why I have a good strike record, because I have those safety guards built in.
Yeah.
They're really important. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really like about it too. It's AI proof. You might say, what's AI proof? Okay.
Yeah.
There are heaps of platforms hitting the market at the moment where if you plug in the site, it spits out how many units it can get on there. Everybody's excited. Everyone's like, oh my God, it's going to open up development opportunities. We can put in sites. That's a disaster. Because if you can put that in, how many other people are going to see that?
Yeah.
All right. So I want that to happen because I want the herd mentality. Because I don't rely on data, I rely on observation.
Yeah.
Now, I've tried this. I put the 40 properties into all the AI platforms that are out there, and they've come back and said, you can't do what you want to do.
More than
but they're done.
Yeah.
So AI relies on data. It can't rely on observation. It can't rely on speculation. It can't rely on the intangibles of me asking it to break the laws. It won't break the laws.
Yeah.
It only knows data.
It only knows that box.
Yeah, because it can only know that.
Yep.
It doesn't know how to tell a story.
Yeah.
And I jokingly say to people, the day that I get a phone call and say, Dom, guess what? They've invented an Android that gets into the car and drives to the site and sees what you see. Fuck. Now we're fucked. Now they've got an observation Android.
Android, yeah.
But until that day, and that's the other thing I like about it, because I'm relying on observation. Now, the skill is convincing council of that observation.
Yeah.
You know, hey, Mr. Council, you know how you have a rule and the setback should be 4 meters? Yeah, it's wrong. What? It's wrong. What do you mean it's wrong? It's a rule. Yeah, I know it's the rule. It's a rule across all of Melbourne, but surely one size can't fit all. Or explain yourself, Dominic. Well, this particular site, right, you're asking me to go 4 meters back, right? Your guidelines say it's got to fit within the streetscape. It's got to be the average of the two neighbours. It's got to be seamless. Well, I walked up and down that street, and yes, the average of the two neighbours means I've got to go back 4 metres. But here are all the properties in the street I've plotted, and the average setback's 0 or 2 metres? And you're talking about being part of the streetscape. Well, I think I'm part of the streetscape, and I think you're not.
There you go.
Yeah, you make an interesting point there, Dom. Yeah, I think we'll have a look at that. That's what I do.
That's what you do.
Observation. The data won't, hence the AI won't do that. The AI will say, average of the two neighbours, 4 metres. Oh, this won't work. Next.
I see.
You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So when people say to me, Dominic, are you worried about AI? I'm not worried about it at all. I love it as a tool.
Of course.
Oh my God. So the first thing that I will do is plug it into the AI. It says 2 units. Let's take a drive down there and have a look. So we take a drive.
Yeah.
Now I usually don't take a drive. I look at photos on the internet or whatever. So
Yeah. You're working on one at the moment where I knew this, but I didn't know it. You mentioned width is far better than depth.
One of the rules I love, and Maria, my wife loves that, is if you're ever going to buy a site, the width is far more superior as a dimension or an attribute than depth. Because you can do way more on a wide site than on a normal site that's long.
Long, yep.
Way more. Yeah. So I'm working on one at the moment at council where it's 30 metres wide, but it's only 8 or 9 metres deep. It should be the other way around, 8 or 9 metres.
Yeah.
And because of that, I can fit 2. Well, I think I can fit 2. I'm trying to convince them of that. Facing the street. I couldn't do that on a conventional site because it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So, so we get excited when someone says, I've got a 20-metre site, because we know the average sites in Australia are about 15, right? So when someone says they've got 20 or even more, wow, we get really excited. So I'm not really worried if you haven't got a deep site, because that's okay. But yeah, width is fantastic.
Okay, awesome. I think we've covered a lot of topics.
I think I spoke most of the time.
No, that's okay, because you were on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt, so you did really well. Thank you so much.
I say this, right? The building industry is filled with some awesome developers who do some great work and awesome architects. And unfortunately, there are some shit architects, shit builders, shit developers, just like in the industry, and they bring the industry's name down, right? I think there is opportunities for people to enter this world with the right information. I'm sad to say I do think it's not going to get better. I don't think it's going to get easier to borrow money. I don't think it's going to be easier to raise deposits. I think the world, it's not just Australia, it's across the world. This belief of getting your first home
is going to be tougher.
It's going to be tougher. So what do? You've got to look for opportunities like developers do. Developers still build. How come they can build? How come they can build and sell to you?
Yeah.
That means there's money in it.
There's money in it.
Or there's opportunity. So if there's money and there's opportunity for them, then join them.
Yeah.
On the escapade. Join that. And if you can't join them solo because you don't have the money, the serviceability, or the knowledge, find the knowledge, find the joint venture partners, find your people. And that's the crusade I'm on. I mean, we could easily talk for another hour, because for me, it doesn't stop there. I have this strong belief that we sell real estate completely wrong in this country. Maybe that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
I really think that real estate, there's a different way to sell. It's basically storytelling, the way I've sold. I've sold heaps of my projects, heaps on my own.
By yourself, without an agent.
Yeah. So the law allows you to sell property if you own it.
Okay.
You don't need to be a licensed agent if you own it, or joint ownership or whatever. I can't sell your property, but I can sell mine.
Yeah.
So I've sold heaps of my own.
Sold by the vendor.
Sold by the vendor, yeah. So I've got this strong urge to, set up the ideal real estate agent. And it's a marriage between an agent, a digital agency and a creative agency. It's just the marriage there, right? I'll go into that in another time. And I also hate the way property is listed on the platforms. It is so wrong. When the listing platforms are just photo albums.
Yeah.
Do you know when you go onto those listing platforms, you look at the pretty pictures, it tells you it's got 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, all that.
Yeah.
And it's got filters. The filters are number of car parks.
Bedrooms,
Okay,
bathrooms.
I have filters too.
Yeah.
So when I go onto that platform, I have 10 filters and I filter through those photos to find my little nuances.
Okay.
Why isn't there a platform with my filters?
With your filters, yeah.
Why aren't they even the most basic ones? Unrenovated, renovated. Shit neighbor, great neighbor. I mean, I'm exaggerating, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The platforms are really, really wrong. And unfortunately, it's one of the few, it's not a profession, one of the few things in life that via the internet age, the gatekeepers are still there. Now, to understand the concept that I'm trying to push through is this. If you want to be a singer today, you don't need a recording contract, right? You can sing on YouTube and you may be discovered,
Yeah.
right? If you want to print and create your own brochures and that, you don't have to go to an agency, you go to Canva.
Yep.
The gatekeepers are gone, right? And so on and so on and so on. The gatekeepers have left. But with the listing platforms, I can tell you now in this country, when I started, Fairfax and Murdoch, who own The Age, if you're in Melbourne, and the Herald Sun if you're in Melbourne, and they own many of the other papers, they were the dominant forces for listing property back then.
Okay.
It cost a fortune back then to list your property in their newspapers. And agents do not have a choice because that's where the market was. In the digital age, they were very, very quick to adopt, bang, set up domain.com.au and realestate.com.au. They are still the gatekeepers. They are the only places you can go where the audience is big enough
That's
to list.
worthwhile.
Yeah. And so I think the fees are too high. I think the disbursements of the advertising fees are wrong. We could do it better. Heaps of other platforms have come into the market, but all they're doing is copying and doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. So why isn't there a different type of listing platform? And I once again have an idea what that could be. Unfortunately for me and for everybody else, the idea is great and it requires millions of dollars to do. But if it could ever be done, I actually think there's a better way to list the property.
Okay. Amazing.
So-
But that is an opportunity for everyday people
If
to
there's a
take advantage of,
billionaire out
right?
there watching this, I think I've got a formula that could take it.
Okay.
People don't buy, if they don't understand what something can do, they can't buy it.
Yeah, true.
Now, these listing platforms and real estate agents, they don't tell you what a property can do. So, agents are governed by law. They can't disclose things that they shouldn't or not allowed
Yeah.
to. The listing platforms aren't governed by the same laws, but still they don't tell you. So the average mum and dad, they can't afford to go to an architect for every property they see. Oh, we want to buy this property. We'll pay you to give us a feasibility.
Yeah.
We can automate that. There are ways we can do that. It's unfair. So the reason there's a dividing line by why first-time home buyers and the average mum and dads can't buy property is because there's that line there. There's the barrier, the listing platforms, the real estate agents, the architects, the builders, the developers. We are protecting that. When I say we, the industry is protecting the front line.
Yeah.
That front line needs to be pushed through. The gatekeepers are still there.
Yep.
You know, and I'm on this side of the line, and I'm trying to
Educate as many people as you can.
to break through the
break
barrier.
through, yeah.
You come.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know if I'll succeed in my lifetime, but I'll be on that rocking chair one day and know that I tried.
Yeah.
That I'll know. If I get to the point where that listing platform is live, I'll be wrapped.
Okay.
I'll be really, really wrapped.
But do you think having this your course will give people the knowledge to see through some of that?
Yeah, because part of that is understanding how the listing platforms work and what they can do. Unfortunately, they will still have to list on those platforms.
Yep.
But what can they do extra or different to enhance the chances of the property selling? So they'll learn that craft.
Okay. Okay.
I'll give you a really, really recent one, as recent as yesterday. So, family members own 3 little retail shops. They put them on the market last year and pretty much just handed them over to an agent. They listed them on the platforms, never to be heard from again.
Right.
Oh, people aren't interested. Oh, it's the return's not great. You know, it's a conveyor belt system. Stick it into the system,
Yeah.
floor plan photography. Blah,
See
blah,
what
blah.
happens.
Okay. So this time around, I gave it to another agent and I said, I'm going to create a 20-page brochure here's the story of the project that I had created. I created this project
Right.
10 years ago. Here's the story, the inspiration, the whole lot. And here's the link. I created it in, actually I didn't create it in Canva, I created it in Flip Snacks, I think it's called, similar. And I gave him a link, PDF files. I said, anyone that rings from now on, you give them this link. It's a book. It's a book, right? It's a story. And he rang me yesterday and said, I think I might have one sold.
Amazing.
I said, you're joking. He goes, no.
It's the story.
Don't buy the story.
Yeah, it's all about the story.
You know, I'll tell this another time, but we sold a project and made $500,000 based on a story I told.
Okay. Can I ask, where did you learn this concept of the story, or how important that was?
Let me just grab a drink.
Yeah, no worries. Because there's a few books out there. I don't know if you
Okay,
learned it from a
so
book.
I didn't know this, but I went back to have a look at the 40 projects I've done over time, and I was storytelling in these projects, but I didn't understand this concept. Like when I went to see the project,
Yeah.
I thought, hey, I've named this project the Metalworks Factory. Why did I do that? Oh, that's right. I used to be part of the Metalworks Factory. Oh, it's got an old bakery from the 1880s, and I labelled it, and I was doing it. I just didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't have a label for it. So I've been storytelling for a long time. I just didn't understand. Storytelling is another word. Is a fancy word for branding and marketing.
Okay.
So I've been branding and marketing my projects for a long time. I just didn't know I was.
Right.
So I got fascinated with storytelling. So I started researching and reading hundreds of hours of podcasts, books. I just insatiable appetite for branding and marketing.
Okay.
So I just fell into that arena and loved it and realized the power of storytelling. And then I started, once you understand branding and marketing and storytelling, and you start to see things that won't, like, become clearer. I'll give an example. So we were out one night with some friends, and our friend had a handbag, but every time we would go to a bar or a restaurant, like in the one night, she would get up and she would take her handbag off and then flip it and put it back on. I thought, what's she doing? It was already on the shoulder. Why would she take it off and reflip it? All right. So I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, she's trying to show the Coco Chanel, whatever it is, right? Logo to the front.
That's funny.
And I thought, and I always say, these are the words I always use. Doesn't matter who I meet, what's the story they're trying to tell? What's the story they're trying to tell, right? Why are you wearing all black? Or what's the story?
Yeah.
I thought, hang on, this is the story she's telling everybody tonight. She's telling anybody that's watching her, I'm the type of person that can afford a Coco Chanel
Coco Chanel
handbag.
bag.
Look at me.
Yep.
So that's one story. But there's a second story. The second story is, I'm the type of person that can afford a Coco Chanel bag. It's two stories running in the one laneway. Mm-hmm. And then I said to myself, so if the handbag is in reverse, she can't tell that story.
She can't.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We can't see the label, right? So that handbag costs $3,000, and if it's made from the same factory, and that handbag's $200, what's the price difference? It's the story. The story is the brand and the logo.
Yep.
That's the only difference. If they're made identical and one doesn't go, that's the only thing that's the difference. So I said to myself, can I do that? That's a little product. What about a big product, like a house? Or a factory? Can I translate that further?
Yeah.
And so that's where storytelling came. Can I tell a story in my buildings? So people won't buy what I do; they'll buy the story. Yeah. And they do.
They do. They do.
If you think about, if I told you, I went to the supermarket and there was all these magnificent oranges, but there was this guy in a cart at the front, and he was selling oranges, and they were navel oranges, and they're from Mildura, and he's a third generation farmer, and he planted these, and I told you the whole story, and at the end of the story I said, oh, but they were 50 cents more. Did you buy one?
Of course. Look, there's a no-brainer, right?
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Even if it tastes the same, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, people want to be able to, it goes back to what we were talking earlier about status affiliation, right? You know, how am I going to brag to people? If, I can't brag if I don't buy it.
Buy it, yeah.
I can't brag if I don't buy the Lamborghini. I don't want a Lamborghini, but how am I going to brag to buy the Lamborghini, right? Or how am I going to live in Toorak, Melbourne, right, and be affiliated with the wealth. I have to go there and buy.
Yeah.
Once you understand that is just storytelling and branding and marketing, which is the fancy word,
Yeah.
I think storytelling has a place. And I think it's okay to pay for that
Yeah.
because it adds
absolutely.
value.
Yep. I think we were talking about Steve Jobs before, right? When the iPod came out, if he came out and said, hey, look at, it's got 8 gigs of data, it means nothing, right? But he came out and said all the music library in one go or something like that.
Go. And that he didn't sell the benefits and features. He
Yeah.
sold what it can do
What it
for
could
you.
do, yeah.
Even the concept of the computer, to be able to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's an industry that you can't.
Yeah.
I always say to people who are worried about AI, if you're creative, you'll be fine. And I don't mean creative in the sense of drawing. I mean creative as in
Creative in your thinking.
I was talking to my accountant the other day. I don't even know if he understood what I was saying. I said to him, he took me out for breakfast. He goes, "Oh, did you get the tax return and the financials I emailed you?" I said, "Yeah." "Did you understand them?" "No." I read a couple of things, the liabilities and the assets. And remember, I rang you about the loan accounts. He goes, "Oh yeah." And then I said to him, why do you do that? Why do you send me those? He goes, "We all do. In the financial, everyone gets that." I said, "I understand. But why didn't you send me a video?" And he's looking at me. He goes, "What do you mean? Why didn't you send me a video and I'll tell you what the video said. Hi Dominic, great news. We've completed the 2024 tax return. The great news is you made $1 million.
Yeah.
The bad news is we've had to give 30% to the tax office."
Yeah.
Some other great news. There is a loan account entry there. That company, it owes you $40,000, right? And here's everything we had to depreciate. You may ask what depreciation is. This is what it is. The great news is your serviceability next year is going to be A, B, C. Have an awesome 2025. If I got that, are you serious?
Love that.
And he's looking at me going, but instead, I got the...
Yeah, he wouldn't have gotten it. Yeah,
he didn't.
I got it, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Even the other day, I was speaking to a stylist. So in property, we deal with stylists, where they
Yeah, style the homes.
style home. And I said to her, "Look, I understand styling. So when I get 3 quotes sent to me, from 3 strangers, and you all do the same thing, you list all the rooms, what the furniture you're going to put in there, and then at the end you write $4,000 for 4 weeks,
Yeah.
$3,740 for 4 weeks, or whatever. Now imagine it goes to someone not in the industry. It's highly likely most of the time it'll go to mum and dad, right?
Mum and dad, yep.
They're going to get those 3 quotes. What do you think they're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to ring the agent and say, "There's $1,000 price difference between all these people. Which one should I use?" "Oh, they're all good." "Okay, but which one's the best one?" "I couldn't tell you which one's the better one, but they're pretty much all the same." They're pretty much all the same. Save ourselves $1,000. Should we just get the cheapest one? Yeah, just get the cheapest one. Or if you're lucky, the middle one.
Middle
right?
one, yeah.
So why would you send your quotes out like that? And so she was saying to me, "So what would you do?" I'd say, this is exactly what I would do. "Hi," on an email, "I went to your home the other day and here's the mood board I came up with for your home. Okay. I have a story to tell. The kids' bedroom, I think we've got enough room in there to do a little yoga cushions and that for the kids. So they might, if they entertain, blah, blah. And in this room, this story, and here's the mood board of how everything's going to come together. And by the way, we have a 3-tiered system because we know budgets are important to people. Here's our deluxe, 4,000, semi-deluxe, 3,000. And we don't want to call it the budget range because we take care of everybody, right? And, here's some sample colours, whatever.
Yeah.
Then I get the other 2, 3,400. I'd say, clearly see that this person's put a lot of thought in this. This is a lot better.
It makes a difference.
They're $300 or $400 more, but she gets it.
Yeah.
And I say that because although this stylist didn't do what I just told you, they did actually do the rooms with stories. They just didn't know. But when I went in there, I saw the story.
I
saw it, right?
Yeah.
So subliminally, or whatever the word is, the buyers would have got it in their head. Because I remember someone saying, "Oh, did you go into that kids' room? The outdoor courtyard was done like a little yoga studio." You know, and that's where so it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Are you showing up in a creative way?
Yep.
You know, there's another story that Seth Godin talks about, and I don't know, you can probably have to Google this, but there's a 7-Eleven in the United States, and the big head people of 7-Eleven couldn't understand why the coffee sales of that particular 7-Eleven are always huge.
Oh, okay.
There's something going on down there that they're killing it down there, right? And they go down, and there's a line out the door.
For coffee.
Yeah. For coffee. They got the house going on. So they go in, and there's this middle-aged woman behind the barista selling coffee, and there's a line. And they're thinking, they go up to it, and they suddenly start to hear what she's saying. And as each person comes up, it was, "Oh, hello, Dominic. Nice to see you today. You having your regular latte, 1 sugar, whatever, shaken, not stirred, whatever? Yep, no worries. Oh, we'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Hi, Jane. How are you?" She had memorized her regular clients, what they drank, and gave them a smile for the day. And what did they do? They came back the next day. And the head honchos looked at each other and said, "I think she's made herself irreplaceable.
Yeah.
She can never be sacked." But she could have turned up and said, "I'm just a barista. I'm not even a barista. I just make coffee.
Yeah.
Do my job. Next." No, she didn't say that. She turned up. She showed up. She showed up in a creative way.
Yeah.
To make her job not ever to be redundant, but also to give joy to her life, give joy to her customers. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter. So I'm deviating, but that's storytelling, really.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that.
And all the buildings you hate, all the crap developments you see, it's because there's no story there. It's a regurgitation of what someone did down the road. It's been repetitive. It's seeing what someone else is doing and copying them. There's no life. There's no soul.
Yeah, true.
Now, you may see a story you don't like. At one of our projects, we did all black kitchens. And the agent goes, "Half the people in this area won't buy these." I know. It's those half we want.
Yeah.
And it's those half that bought. Because those half paid more. Because they love black kitchens.
That's it. Because there's like the premium.
Well, it's who's your market. If your market is everybody, you're fucked.
Yeah.
But if your market is this, you may have a chance.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what I was saying to you before. Who's your avatar?
Yep.
Who are you trying to attract? These 3-level townhouses, there's no chance a family's going to buy these. So why are we going to pamper them? Forget them.
There's no point.
Who's going to buy these? First-time buyers or young couples, professionals work from home. They're going to work from home. Should we give them a space they can work at? Not just call a room a study, but actually physically design a home office? Or what can we do so that when they get there, they go, "Shit, I can run my business out of here." So the avatar starts from day one.
Yeah.
But it's plain architect. It's being creative. Our world isn't filled with that. It's filled, developers, as one ex-client said to me once, "Hey, Dom," because I said to him, his work is shit. And he said to me, "Dom, while shit sells, I build shit." And I thought, you know what? His name was Joe. I said, "Joe, you're not going to last long, mate. You are not going to last long." And I was wrong. He's still going today, and he's proven me wrong. Shit does sell.
It does sell. Okay.
So there's a market for everything.
There's a market for everything. Yeah.
There's a market for everything.
Yeah.
So, but I deviate. But yeah. So if people want to find me,
Yeah.
if they want to find me, I just go to my Instagram profile, which is
You're very active on that, right?
Yeah, I am at the moment. That.invisible.architect, the invisible architect. You'll find me there because I'm actually to show people that it's real. I'm doing a live deal. I'm posting every day things that go right, things that go wrong, the story I'm trying to tell. Like I'm showing people live that this is possible.
And it is a masterclass on its own, right?
Yeah, and people say to me, "Hey, what if you fail?" Well, then I'll show people what to do when things go wrong.
Yeah.
What if it's the first project you get that doesn't get a permit? Well, I'll show you my plan B.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? To be real. Otherwise, I'm fake. It's got to be real. Otherwise, because it's easy to show you what I've done, because
it's a success, right?
It's a success.
Yeah.
It's already done, right? It's much harder to do it live in the hope that it's going to be achieved. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, especially dealing with people who go on leave for 3 weeks and just ignore your work, and then the team leader calls it. I love these stories.
I know.
It's just amazing.
But that's what happens. You see, people don't see that. I mean, to be really honest with you, people think developers make a killing and builders make a killing and designers make a killing. They don't. I can tell you now, they do not.
Okay.
It is hard, it's tough. There are successes and there are failures. There are so many people that take their piece of the pie. You know, you'll see someone buy a property for $1 million and then you'll find out that they sold it for 2, and your brain says, oh, they made $1 million. No, they didn't, because so many people ate into that pie that whatever's left is, you know, I mean, the reality, which is what I told you before, is builders want to make 25%. But the reality is they're working on margins of 10 or 15% just to keep going.
Just to keep going.
So it isn't what people think.
Yeah.
Now, how can you make those big margins? Is seeing the invisible, seeing what I can see. If you're buying what everybody else can see, your margins are going to be low.
Yeah.
Because everyone else can see them. And remember what I told you? The money's made at the purchase price. So if at auction, you both can see 2 dwellings and they take the price up, not to the $1 million, which is where it should have sold, but at 1.2,
Yep.
you're already behind by 200,000. So now you're struggling.
Yep. You're playing catch up, which might not be. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the key. The key is identifying the development opportunity, buying it at the right price. Don't worry about the execution. You can learn all of that.
Okay.
Even the storytelling. The other reason I want to create this is this. I do have a system, and I would love people to join the community. I would love architects, all the consultants required to run a project. I'd love them in there. I want them to do the course and almost to be certified, to my way of thinking, to give people the chance to then hire them to do it this way. It's not the best way. It may not be the only way. And there are hard-nosed developers that would say, no, I'm not storytelling. I'm doing what I want. Fine. I just find that this is much easier.
Yeah, and I love that. I'll make sure I put all of your links in the show notes. What we end up doing is end up creating like a little profile for you.
Yeah.
And under that will be your website, your course link, your social media, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have a domain name for your course yet? Not yet.
I've got the domain names. I don't have the website live.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes. And then anyone who's
Even if
interested,
they go to Instagram, I've got links there as well. So once they're in Instagram, there's the links.
they can see that.
There'll be links there. And once I have a website or whatever I've got, they can go to that.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I don't know
this.
whether I just spoke.
No, I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure.
I don't know if I was
anyone who's
fidgeting
listening
or.
to this- I loved it. Anything else that you want to share before I guess we wrap up? Because I know you probably need to get to sleep because it's a bit late now.
No, you know, I think all education is valuable. And so I know people are scared, if I buy this course, will I lose my money? You know, or if I do this course, what happens if I just never do a property, like I just don't do it? And the reality is, you know, I spent a fortune on an e-commerce course and I didn't do it. Sorry, I didn't launch a product.
Yep.
But that course, and I spent $20,000, it made me $500,000.
There you go.
I'll tell you why. So during that course, there was a segment or a module about creating a brochure, but reverse engineering a fictitious product. So the fictitious product was an imaginary camping business. And so the brochure that was created and was shown to us was that actually was live and real and showed all the products and at the end, the profits. And if you were going to sell that to someone who wants to buy that business. Anyway, so that was that. On a project that I did, I wanted to get more money than we were going to sell the project for. So I remember that brochure and I thought, I'm going to create a brochure telling the story. I wonder if I'll get more money. And we made $500,000 more.
Just from that idea.
It took me a week to produce. So I won't go into great detail, but basically we had a project, we got development approval, and we're going to on-sell it to a developer. Oh. The developer wanted to pay $3 million, and I wanted more money. I think it was worth more. And the agent had told me, Dominic, 3 million is a record price. That is considered a lot of money. You will never ever get more than $3 million. And they were probably right.
Okay.
So the offers, it was advertised, and they were the offers that came in.
Yep.
2.83 million. I said, please give me 1 week to come up with an idea. So I spent a week producing this brochure and the storyline to sell to the developer. This is the story, Mr. Developer. This is the reason you should buy this project, and this is the story you should tell the world when you buy the project. If you do this, you're going to be successful.
Okay.
So I reverse engineered it.
Yep.
I actually reverse engineered the whole project and put it into a book, a flip book. So when they go on the link, the book flips. I said to the agent, now go back and re-advertise, but when people ring up, give them this link.
Yeah.
He goes, you got rocks in your head. No worries. So he does that. He rings me. Hey, Dominic, we just got the first offer, $3.5 million.
Whoa.
I said, shit, I want 3.6. He goes, what? Anyway, the next offer came in at 3.580, then 3.6, and then we squeezed another 20,000, 3.620.
Jeez.
So, was my education wasted on that e-commerce business? No chance. No. So all I'm saying is, you know, with the door open, take the opportunity. Now I've learned that concept, so I'm very mindful that anyone that does my courses, I've done it in such a way that if they didn't do property development, could they take the learnings and adopt it into anything else in life? Storytelling, yes. I could adopt his philosophy for telling the story of a product I'm designing or a florist I'm owning. Project management is project management.
Yes.
Tracking costs is tracking costs. Identifying opportunities. Well, now that Dominic's taught me that there are invisible things out there that I don't ever look at, he's taken the veil off. So now when I'm looking at that business or that product launch, I see it with different eyes.
Different eyes,
I see
absolutely.
the invisible.
Absolutely.
So I'm super conscious that I know there will be people who will spend their money and will never do a property transaction. But if they can just remember some of those things, they'll get back the money they paid in one item. Just one.
100%.
And, you know, I learned that one day by accident as well, because it wasn't initially that brochure. I accidentally walked into the wrong seminar one time
Oh, did you?
on the Gold Coast. The venue had two things going at once. One was a medical one, and one wasn't. I was meant to be in that one and walked into the medical, but where I sat, I was embarrassed to get up. So I sat through the first session. So every time they said the word doctor, I put the word architect in there and started taking notes. And when I went out, I thought,
That was pretty
actually
good.
works. Oh my God. I think I can adopt this whole philosophy.
Yeah.
And then I learned. And obviously, if I stayed around and they started talking about blood tests and that, it wouldn't have worked, right?
Yeah.
But that session that morning taught me a lesson that, you know, are you in the right room?
Yeah.
You be in the room. You need to be in the room to have a chance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've got no chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Seth Godin, I keep mentioning him, but he tells a great story. There are no lifesavers. No one is coming to rescue you.
No one is coming to save you.
You know, first-time buyers, complain all you want. No one's coming.
I keep telling this. If it's meant to be, it's up to you. Go do it.
I've only got one quote on my wall, one from Stephen Bartlett, and his quote is, most businesses fail simply because people never start them. You know? Most people don't get their first home simply because they never looked at other avenues.
Yeah.
You know, and on and on and on and on. I can go on forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's. I tell people if I was to leave anything to anybody, and that is, once again, we could have a whole session of people that have mentored me, but the answers are all there. You've got to go find them.
You got to go do it. Yeah.
You know, one of the greatest joys I had was at university, where I wasn't very good at physics, and unfortunately, physics is a big part at university. Physics is basically how buildings stand up. You do not want to fail that one, right? I had no idea what they were talking about. I'd go to the classes and I'd go, what the hell? Is this English? What are they saying? And so I decided not to turn up to the lectures or the tutorials and bury my head in the sand. And for the first time I ever felt vulnerable. I was not going to become an architect. So I went to the library, because back then there was no internet. I found this little book. I'm not kidding. It was little, tiny little book. It's called Structure. Structure is another word for physics. And I opened it up, and it had formulas and everything, but it was taught in a way I understood it.
God.
I thought, oh my God, I understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
And so in those days, you could borrow a book for 7 days and you had to bring it back. So I would bring it back and watch the lady put it into the trolley, wheel the trolley, put it on the shelf, and then I would take it and hide it in the cooking section, right? And then I would re-borrow it. Anyway, this went on for 6 months. I turned up to the lecture, and back then there were halls of 100 people, and the person goes to me, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm here for the exam." And she goes, "Who are you? You've never turned up to a lecture and you've never turned up to a tutorial." And I said, "My name should be there. I did enroll in this class." She goes, "Yeah, your name is there. Good luck." Right? I got a B plus.
It's pretty good, right?
And then I realised, my God, all the answers are out there. All the answers are there.
Yeah.
You just got to go find them.
You got to find them. I mean,
Now-
we can complain all we want. We can complain about immigration, interest rates, inflation, all of that stuff.
Can we worry about tariff wars? Can we worry about AI? We've got enough worries.
Yeah.
I mean, we can worry forever. There's a certain calmness when you let go.
Yeah.
When you actually almost put your head in the sand and say, "Oh well,
Yeah. I completely agree. Like, there's things you cannot control. Don't worry.
I can't
about it.
control
Yeah.
that." I mean, I did something this year that I thought I'd never do. So I was an avid lover of the news. I mean, really, I watched the news, read 3 or 4 newspapers a day, top to bottom. I mean, insatiable appetite for gossip and the small things in life. Trivia, just... But during COVID, it really got to me, the negative news. I mean, really, I just couldn't take. Every time I opened up the news, read the paper, it was disaster. And my wife said to me, "Stop watching the news, stop. It's all negative." And I didn't see it until she pointed it out. So I went cold turkey.
Well done.
And it's been since 2019. I haven't, might have read a paper here or there, but I don't watch the news. And I don't buy into any of that. I run my own race.
Amazing.
This is my race.
Yep.
This is all I can control. So, yes, there is noise out there and it's fearful, but I try and protect my little world, my little family, because I can't do anything about it.
You can't do anything about it.
Labor got in, Liberal didn't get in. What am I going to do? Houses are going up. What am I going to do? I can only control what I can control. And through my little platform, I hope to help 100 people. Is it 200? Is it 1,000? And if that's all that ever happens, that's the little world I belong in. It's easy for me to say because by standards, I live a good life. By people that are far more well off than me, I don't live a good life.
Yeah.
But, there are people that would kill to be in our shoes.
Yeah.
Think
100%.
about those people that would just kill. We don't have worries.
Absolutely.
We've got no worries.
It's funny that you mentioned this because I told you I'd end up doing a daily vlog, and I'm one of those people who advocate don't watch the news. To illustrate this point, I ended up buying one of the newspapers, first time in 30 years, whatever. And I set up a camera on top of me, went through it article by article, 3 columns: negative, positive, neutral. And I went through it. Obviously, it was subjective, but you can tell, someone gets murdered over there, negative. 70-80% was all negative.
Yeah, I did a similar exercise, and anything else that was left was advertising.
Yes.
Oh, there's nothing in here.
There's nothing in there.
in this document
Yeah.
anymore. So yeah, no, geez, I'm glad I borrowed that little book because it taught me, because I really didn't understand physics. I really did not understand it. It's like saying, learn Italian. Whatever language. I just didn't understand it. And then to find a little book that's no bigger than your hand.
And you just go, yeah.
Some guy had the power of wisdom to teach it in this little book. And then I realised that, and I've adopted that philosophy in my buildings. So when I get a no from the council, it's not a no, it's
maybe.
It's a maybe, right? It's a maybe, right? It's the most recent one. 3 pages of concerns. We're concerned you don't meet this, you don't meet this, you don't meet this. And I wrote back saying, I hear your concerns. This is the reason. And then eventually it whittled down to, oh yeah, we're supportive of that.
Yeah.
But if you got the first letter, you would have had a heart attack
Yeah.
because of reading what they're concerned about.
Because they probably didn't go through your original pack properly, maybe.
No,
I don't
because
know.
they go through a checklist. I submitted this. The checklist says he didn't put this and this, and they send it back with what they call an RFI, a request for further information.
Yep.
I know how the system works.
Yeah. I like this.
And we start, once again, it's about storytelling. When I got that letter back, I said to my wife, this is a new planner, and she's junior.
You knew straight
Oh,
away.
yeah. And Marie goes, yeah. Because they went through the textbook.
checklist, yeah.
And they put, the if there's 1,000 items, they put the whole 1,000.
Yeah.
So the way we then engaged with her changed. Even the dialogue on the emails, I changed everything about the way I spoke, the way I handled
Because you
it.
knew.
Yeah, because I said to myself, we've got a junior. You know, it could go bad for us. It could go well for us. We could. No, manipulate's the wrong word. Take her through the journey with us.
Yeah.
That it's okay to buck the system. That it's okay to see it. You know what I mean? Like, and this, and the opposite of an experience. When we got an experienced person, we know that as well. We're always thinking about who's going to get this application, and what are they going to do. Remember I told you about that planner that wrote us that note?
Yeah.
So when I started my career, I was lucky enough to have a great friend of mine who was a planner at a local council. And he said, Dom, I'll give you some really good advice. I said, yeah, tell me. And he goes, you know, when you do an application at council, make sure it's really professional in its presentation, that it has everything in there and it's of a really high standard. And I said, oh, why is that? And he goes, because 90% of the applications that come in are shit. They lack information, poor architecture, and what it does, the planner is fighting hard to do her job. You've made their job so hard that they resent it. Then comes a really good one, and they love it. Not because it meets all the standards, just because it's professional.
Yeah.
So I advise you to do a professional application, right?
Amazing.
And what happens is when it goes into the council, they fight over it. So if you've done 2 or 3, when that architect's work comes in, I want to do his work, they fight over it. So it's like, you know, asking someone to clean the toilets, and then someone comes in and says, who wants to, you know, sit at the front desk today? You know, they want the front desk.
They want the front desk.
So I was so wrapped, I learned that on day one. So all of our applications have always been of a high standard.
Yeah.
In terms of quality, not necessarily, I'm talking about architecture, I'm talking about what we give over.
Dom, I think we might have to wrap up
Yep.
because the cameras are dying.
I think I've eaten all your.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so
jeez.
much, Dom. But you know what? This has never happened. So we must have talked for a decent amount. So I do want to thank the Unemployable team for making me aware of you and introducing.
They're great people.
They're
and
great
people should
boys.
follow them.
Yeah,
They're a
they're
great
great.
bunch of guys. They're starting their own property courses too. Their podcasts about business is awesome. I highly recommend them.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And you've been really generous with your time. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
And I'll leave, for anyone watching this, I'll leave everything in the show notes. Check it out.
Fantastic.
Till we meet again.
Good on you.
Thanks,
See ya.
Tom.
See you
Thank
next
you.
time.